Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings. Yep, 65. The new year is here. I know. It's amazing, isn't it? First proper ramblings of the new year. Because obviously, the Fridays was a catch-up ramblings, and therefore doesn't actually count towards being a proper full ramblings. This, however, is the first ramblings of the new year, number 65. Now we're off towards the next big milestone, which is the 4-year anniversary of Fleet's Random Ramblings. Yeah, 4 years. 4 years. May 21st. 4 actual, full-on years of doing this. That's a significant portion of my life. That's a fifth of my life doing this. And I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. I mean, it might get to me every now and then. I will admit I'm not perfect. But I don't think I'm ever going to get tired of doing ramblings. I like doing it way too much. Now, without further ado, let's actually get the audience members in. There we go. And let me make sure that I have done a few things that I want to do, which is... Yeah, it's all a bit low-tech right now. Like, you know, I do everything a bit manually, but we will get there in terms of mechanization. We will start including things like automatic pings on the Discord server and things of that nature. We will get to that. Oh, and also, actually, if I'm going to start using it, I may as well continue. I may as well start doing this whenever I go live. Hang on. You know, sometimes this is just... I still haven't wrapped my head around how Twitter works. It's like a foreign language to me. Yes. I am one of those rare breed from the late 90s who doesn't understand how anything beyond Facebook works. Hello, John Shear. Hello, Maximus. Hello, Timu. Hello, Blackburn, Maximus again. And on Discord, we have... Hello, Spatful Goes to ABC. Hello, Maricane. Hello, Conron. Welcome, all of you, to Ramblings. Now, obviously, I promised that... I promised the Timu that I would...
Is your memory failing you, Fleet?
It wouldn't be the first time.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is true.
Oh, of course, I see why you want Dr. Clark here for that one. Oh, that's going to be fun. And I can't cheat and go and look them up, because that wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be in the spirit of the question
Put out
anyway.
a ping, by the way, Fleet.
Oh, bugger! No, I didn't.
Yeah, you kind of forgot that bit, didn't you?
I was so busy doing everything else that I actually forgot about that one, the oldest thing that I used to do to get Ramblings going. Can't believe I forgot that. That's not like me.
I can.
Well, no, actually, it is like me.
Yes,
but,
it is.
there was something else I wanted to do. What was it? Oh, yes! That reminds me.
Once again, people, Fleet talking about his memory. Shock horror.
Dragon, you are a little bit.
I know, it's why I'm having to keep muting my mic.
All right. Sorry about that. I got a call.
Unfortunately, I've ended up got my headset appears to have a wire broken the upper part of the connection, which is annoying as hell.
Oh.
Oh, well, that's no good.
All right, that issue.
This is why I hate wired headsets. They break so bloody easily.
Mine are usually okay. For some reason.
This is the second pair that has broke it within 3 months.
Wow, you.
What?
Honestly,
What are you doing to your headphones?
honestly, do what I do.
Literally nothing apart from wearing them.
Honestly, do what I do. Buy cheap and cheerful. For some reason, they seem to last
Hell,
forever.
it's not even. Hell, these were one of these were only about 20 quid.
Okay, that's a little bit too cheap and cheerful.
Well, what define cheap and cheerful then?
Anything between £30 and £40. Well, actually,
There was no headset in that range.
Actually, how long ago was
Where were you looking?
How long ago was
Argos, PC World / Curry's, and one or two other places.
Yeah, I need to figure out.
Indeed, burn the Pacers. Those buses should never have been placed onto British Rail.
They absolutely should. They saved a lot
Now,
of
here's the
passenger
thing.
rail services
here's
that
the thing,
otherwise wouldn't have
Petch.
been saved.
I used to use a SteelSeries pair of wired headset. They broke after like 5 years of use. So they were very good. They were 130 quid though.
Yeah, I need money for the other things. Right, so, since I'm waiting for Dr. Clark to ask Timu's question, oh boy. Alright, so let's start with the Discord question. And I missaid your last name, John. How do you say it? You'll have to let me know. Right, is there any Discord questions? There are not. So, first question is actually on YouTube, and it's from Knight. Knight61. Fleet, you say the US would like Canada to have SSNs. The last time with the Canada class, the US was against Canadian SSNs because it would significantly hurt their submarine operations and lead to a possible fight over access to the Canadian Northwest Passage and actively worked to kill it. So why should Canada trust America to help get SSNs, given how they acted last time? Because it's no longer the 1980s. The United States Navy is looking at the first close-to-peer opponent it has seen for 30 years, in the form of the People's Liberation Army Navy, and it is looking at fighting that opponent with less assets than it had before. Oh, and the Russian Navy still exists. So anything that frees...
honestly,
so
the one
anything that...
concerned about is their submarine arm.
Yeah. Anything that frees up US submarines to serve in the Atlantic and the Pacific instead of having to patrol the Northwest Passage is a net gain, and to be blunt, the US is going to have to fight for Northwest Passage access anyway, given that Canada will likely see and enforce their sovereignty over it, and will probably, despite how much that might annoy people, that's going to be the way it is, and the US can either accept that or they can go to war over it, because the Canadians are not going to back down.
Yeah, because isn't there like a bunch of oil up there as well?
Yeah, and to be blunt, the US can do whatever it likes, but let's be real, even under Trump, they're not going to go to war over the Northwest Passage. It's just not. Let me see. So let's look at. Nope, still no Discord questions. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I nearly missed that. Lion asks, Fleet and Friends, what are your favourite DMUs? I have a real soft spot for the Transpennine DMUs, the original 6-car sets that British Rail built. Such unique-looking 6-car express in multiple units.
I'm gonna have to say, what are the ones they turned into the Royal Mail EMUs? Those ones. The idea of a postal service EMU, I really like. I really like that. Am I still audible?
Yes, you are. You just nothing else. No one has
Okay.
anything else to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, there's both the aspect of one, it's unique, but two, I think that's a really good idea that needs to be replicated elsewhere. I remember, oh god, a while back, and I keep kicking myself because I didn't save it when I saw it. Somebody had done like a fictional livery for the F40PH, but it was USPS. It was a USPS F40PH.
That doesn't.
I know it would never happen, but I so wanted to. I just like I just like it when the post office runs trains.
Admiral Wellesley on Discord asked, did the aircraft carrier make the battleship obsolete or obsolescent? No, the missile did. Or more accurately, the guided weapon that ignores armor did. Be it in the form of glide bombs or anti-ship missiles, whether launched from aircraft, submarines, or other surface ships. At that point, the big gun and the armor plate become obsolete. Because the missile does not care how much armor you have, the missile will kill you regardless. And as time goes on, the size of missile you need to achieve that effect goes down and down and down until you get to where we are today, and something like Harpoon or even a single smaller missile than that could penetrate the armor of any known capital ship ever built or conceived. A Harpoon looks at Yamato's turret face and goes, that's not even going to slow me down.
I would argue they started. I wouldn't argue they went obsolete, but I would argue a little bit more that they had been dethroned as the preeminent capital ship.
Yes,
by
but
the
they weren't.
carrier.
Yes, but they weren't obsolete by any means.
Correct, but only because, not because of any function of strike power, but of range.
Yeah, like
A
if
carrier
a carrier,
can always hit a battleship before the battleship can hit it.
yes,
And the same is true of any other craft. When you get once you have missiles, you have something that can that equals the range of the carrier, but does not require a flight deck, and that's what ultimately supplants it. Is sort of your guided missile ship.
yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, what is next? I think the next question is a YouTube question.
Yep, it would be.
So, 1971, how much of Canada's submarine problems could have been avoided if the 12 Canada-class SSNs had been bought as planned? All of them. Literally all of them. Quite literally. All of them. You remove all of Canada's subsurface problems, and those vessels would only now be coming up for replacement. And you would have 12 boats in the class to pad out the time to replacement. You'd be able to selectively work various members of the class to extend the life of the overall fleet until you get a replacement. It's really that simple. Anything on YouTube? Nope.
You just did a YouTube.
No, that was Discord. No, sorry, that's not YouTube. Sorry. Anything. There we go. A Discord question. From Sufficiently Nautical, Kantai-Kessa was designed to let the Japanese defeat a numerically superior opponent. However, since the doctrine was predicted on ultimately playing the enemy's game, i.e. fighting a big line battle for all the marbles. Had Japan been willing to go outside the box, what might be some viable asymmetric strategies using Japan's resources? Well, it's important to bear in mind that as myself, Drac, and Dr. Clark have said a few times now over the last year and a bit, we've been systematically deconstructing the myth of Kantai Kessen. The Kantai Kessen is only the last phase of a long-term war, where the enemy is attrited constantly as they close towards the home islands, and then their fleet is defeated in a final battle in Japanese home turf, with their fleet having been conserved for this action. And that basically requires asymmetric strategies. So submarines constantly harassing the enemy fleet, carriers conducting strikes on opposing naval assets, land-based aviation conducting strikes, tying up the enemy around islands that the Japanese have captured, as happened historically. But instead of the goal is not just to delay the Americans in terms of time, but it's also to sink and attrit naval assets that are engaged in the sieges of those islands, while conserving the fleet. I mean, this happened historically. Guadalcanal was part of the extension of the tripwire defenses that were supposed to lead to the Kantai Kessen. But even then, you see the Japanese sort of moving away from the doctrine until it is revived just in time for the Battle of Philippine Sea, which is Japan basically rolling the dice on the decisive battle. And if Japan had had a decent turnover rate for carrier aviators of even just basic quality, that fight would have been a lot closer than it actually was. But of course, because they didn't, the US aviators walked all over it. In terms of viable asymmetric strategies, well, the ones that we've seen historically. You move away from looking for that decisive battle and you engage with assets that you see fit. So the Congos are freed up from waiting around for the decisive battle to go and serve as heavy units during the Guadalcanal campaign. Again, there's a lot of things we see historically that are basically Japan doing exactly that. So, on YouTube, 1981 asks, would it be fair to say Hoche and all French ironclad battleships were a victim of the rapid technological advancement as the first pre-dreadnought battleship was launched in 1891? Well, yes, that is fair to say, but it's important to bear in mind that Hoche and her half-sisters... Well, Hoche herself isn't a direct equivalent, but her half-sisters in the Marceau class I would reasonably expect to have about 45, 55 odds of taking on a Royal Sovereign and winning. They're both ships of a very similar generation. Yes, the Marceaus are technically ironclads, but they are of the last generation of French ironclads, and come into service around the same time as the Royal Sovereigns. And while Hoche is not a contemporary, and I would not say she is, the Marceaus are very much what I would say are contemporary to the Royal Sovereigns. And I would basically say it would come down to crew quality and the specifics of an engagement as to who wins that fight.
Yeah, British.
And you can hate them as much as you like, but the Charles Martels, any one of them wins a fight with a Royal Sovereign, because the Charles Martels are proper pre-dreadnought battleships, and the Royal Sovereigns have those open barbettes that really, yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So, next question is on Discord from Lion Fleet. If you could fix British Rail on your own, what would you do? Since I know a lot of Brits I talk to complain about cancelled trains and such. Well, the UK rail network is better now than it ever was under British Rail because British Rail just sucks. Really, it was abysmal.
No, it doesn't.
It was abysmal. It was abysmal. Constantly rotting trains, barely any investment until the last days of the network. A modernisation plan so utterly balked it was ridiculous. Civil service corruption at every stage of that blasted institution.
And yet, you then look and go, most of them actually preferred working under British Rail than the other companies.
Yes, but that's not to do with the work conditions. It's to do
That
with
but that's incredibly important if your workers prefer it.
All right, I'm also going to jump in here and say that British Rail's operating ratio was better than basically any other passenger rail service in Europe.
That's not true. That is not true. I could point to the
I need to
Swiss.
find the source.
I could
but
point to the Swiss, the Germans, even SNCF, the bastard stepchild of the National Railway Networks, does better.
the amount of, let's see here, the amount of subsidization government needed to do per basically stuff carried of British Rail was lower than anything else.
Overall, British Rail was actually quite good.
Yes,
It just didn't
British
fit
Rail was
the
quite
number of
good.
doors.
has very much had its reputation tarnished.
If anything, I think, no offense, but people like yourself, Fleet, have massively overstated how bad British Rail actually was. And now everyone just goes, oh, well, British Rail bad.
But it was. It's not an overstatement.
No,
it
but
was.
in the 90s, it really was
Oh,
tarnished.
but-
like, even,
no,
like, think of everything that Maggie Thatcher did, and she still didn't privatise the railways because she knew it was going to be such a bad move.
No, the 90s, when British Rail starts getting things like the Intercity 225s, the networkers on Network Southeast, that's when British Rail actually starts pulling its head out of its arse and doing things.
So why did it need privatisation?
It didn't.
It
I'm
didn't,
not.
exactly.
I'm not arguing that it needed to be privatized. What I'm arguing is that for the majority of the country, that we have better trains, tighter timetables, and
Not
yes,
really.
I'm not denying working conditions have gotten worse. But in terms of
Ticket prices have got extortionate.
yes, and I'm not denying that either. But in terms of actual railway operations themselves, timetables are tighter, trains are more modern, we move more freight by rail than... yes, we lost wagon load freight, but that was always going to happen under British Rail or someone else. Look, the problem we've got now is that the network is neither fish nor fowl. It's not a national network, and it sure as hell ain't private. It is neither fish nor fowl, it is the worst of both worlds.
Which means it, yeah.
Either it needs to be fully privatized with full railway companies like we used to have in the good old days when we had things like the LNR, LMS, Southern
They all went
Railway,
bust.
Great Western. They did not.
Well,
They went
they
bust.
didn't all go bust,
Chair,
but they all...
they went bust because the government didn't pay them for war service. That's what happened.
But they all need... But amalgamation happened in the... Yeah, I guess the 20s, but...
To be fair, amalgamation was a mistake. It artificially influenced the development of the national network in a way that was harmful to that network. That would be my first step, would be to not do the Grouping Act and let the railways continue to amalgamate as they had. Because they didn't buy each other out and then rip up track, they amalgamated naturally. And that's what was happening in the 20s. It didn't need to be rushed into these four big conglomerates. It just wasn't needed. It took a lot of the fire out of the competition that had made the railways great. That had brought us the crack express trains, that had brought us the modernization of freight.
I'm going to say the Crack Express was always going to happen.
Well,
Because
yes,
this thing called a car now exists.
no, that's not what I'm.
Yeah,
That's not what I'm talking about.
This is still before the car.
Yeah, we are.
yeah,
is
but
what
it's not. We're talking
about. But
1920s. We're talking
the other thing
birth of
I'm
the
going
car.
to mention here is the single most efficient railway.
Always going to be
Oh.
Mike's acting up turrets.
Yeah, we lost him for a
Railway
second
company.
there.
Always going to see a cartelization of the industry. We can see that with the U.S. And basically the entirety of U.S. railroad history. It's a very cartelized industry.
Yeah, I'm not denying that, but the difference is the UK and US railway industries, when they were private, were radically different. The UK railway network has always been incredibly heavily regulated and under sharp business regulations that the US railways, if they had to deal with, would cry bloody murder at.
The thing is, the U.S.
even
railways
prior to
were
the Grouping Act.
under that sort of regulation at one point, and you want to know what happened? Penn Central.
That was
Because there was so heavy regulation. They were told, let's see here, in the state of Indiana, they mandated 5-man crews. 5.
yeah,
For all trains, freight or passenger.
yes, that's the awful body known as the Interstate Commerce Commission, which no longer exists for
There
exactly
was
that
also
reason.
regulation basically forcing them to run, so many passenger trains a day.
Yeah, that's not the sort of regulation to which I'm referring. I'm referring to regulation regarding that's the sort of minutia that, while both countries had, the US for some reason had it worse. It's weird. The country that has more free business is the one that had stricter regulations on things like that. Whereas with the UK, the unions usually got things to... They weren't quite up with it all the time. For example, the HST needing extra windows to have a 2-man crew until they got rid of that. But it was decidedly... The unions were slightly more up with it than the American Interstate Commerce Commission was.
But where I'm going with that is because they were required to run those passenger services, they couldn't. When something like Penn Central happened, they couldn't, actually reduce their redundancy.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. That's something that the UK, there weren't. No, check and help me with this. I'm fairly certain. But correct me if I'm wrong. But during the pre-grouping era, and even during the era of the Big Four, it was fairly. It wasn't completely straightforward in the railways' hands, but it was fairly easy to get permission from the UK government to abandon
my argument.
railway lines, wasn't it? I'm sure. I know some
Here's-
were abandoned. But
What? So it's
I will agree. The Grouping Act wasn't exactly a good idea. But my take is it because it didn't go far enough. It should have been nationalized at that point.
The problem I have with that is that either I have a firm opinion on railways. If they start national, they stay national. If the government builds the railways, the government keeps them because then they have built up the experience and railway culture that running a railway requires. If they start private, they stay private because government is not going to have the railway culture required to run them.
The problem is always going to be government overreach. But I think British Rail was well set up in that regard, where it had a separate, it had its own leadership structure, with the government effectively acting as a board of directors.
yeah.
I think
Right, Yuki,
that
in chat,
works.
you're the railway nerd. Tell me what to say, and I'll
It is a
parrot what you're
separate
saying.
organization.
Private railways don't
oh,
work. I could go to Switzerland and just laugh hysterically and laugh you out the room because the
Yeah, but aren't they state corporations where
Nope.
most of the corporations are owned by state entities?
no, not at all. Most of the Swiss private companies are pure private companies operating on their own dime.
But I think the key difference
There is
the
a Swiss
actual
Federal Railway
trackage.
network. There is a Swiss Federal Railway network, but it works with the private companies with trackage agreements and running rights. Like the BLS and the Swiss Federal Railways
so
have
the government is actually maintaining all the trackage.
no.
Is Oh, okay.
No, the Swiss Federal Railways has the track that it owns and operates. But the Bern-Lochberg Simplon Railway, the BTG Group, the Bodensee-Toggenburg Bahn, and a bunch of other railways I could think of, all own their own stock, stations, and track. And the system works harmoniously because the Swiss government didn't overreach. They nationalized the routes they knew were vital for their own defense and what they thought was essential for keeping the country going, and routes they thought were failing that couldn't afford to fail. But after that, they chose to back off and let either new companies be founded or let the independent companies they chose not to take over carry on. And it's worked rather harmoniously since then. I'm not saying it's perfect. In fact,
According to Reuters, though, the Swiss government legally owns at least 35% of these companies.
I'm not sure on that one.
And it's like, say they're actually correct, and it is 35% of the company, then that would explain.
Are you talking about the Swiss Federal Railways
Right,
itself, or are you talking about BLS? You're talking about the Bodensee-Toggenburg? Because there's a lot of different companies. Which one are you talking about?
The Swiss federal government.
Are you talking about the fiscal?
According to Reuters, the Swiss federal government owns legal owns between 25 and 35% of all private railways in. And then 25 to 35% of the company, not the trackage or anything.
That's an interesting system.
And so they have significant underpass puppeting of those companies.
That's interesting.
That's probably how they get them all to play nice.
I'll have to look that up. Well, to be fair, the Swiss railway companies played
All
nice.
this is taught me is that I don't know enough about railway governments.
Play nice.
Oh, yeah, I'm
generally.
just parroting Reuters here, and Reuters are a bit. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing you could do is a hybrid system. One of the innovations I think the U.S. should do with its net railway system is basically nationalize the trackage under the railway and let them operate on it.
No, absolutely not. That is an awful idea. That's the system. That's the system we've got, and
That's
it is
one
the
thing
worst
that
of both
I know
worlds.
for certain is you want the guys running the train to own the track.
Yes, absolutely.
But the issue is that right now those companies keep ripping up so much of their track, and
Which is
they're
why
not
it should be in the
extending sidings
public ownership.
while they are extending lengths of trains. So none of the trains fit in the passenger sidings, and that's why Amtrak is having so many issues with its timetable.
Well, yes,
It's
but that's
because
that's
Amtrak
bad
is
management.
the only thing that fits the siding.
That's bad management rather than like that's. And I mean that is something you get with private companies generally, but again, the problem also comes down to the fact that for the first time in as long as it can be remembered, U.S. railroads are now run by CEOs who are not railroad men, and we're seeing the results of the first generation of that happening, and that's leading to what we've seen in the U.S.
I argue
the bigger the
it's
smile, the
cost-cutting,
sharper the
plain and simple.
knife.
They are trying to cut costs far too much.
Yeah. And I think you could argue that with regulation saying you have to have been in the railroad business for a certain number of years before you're eligible to, just because of the strategic imperative for the railway networks to be efficient and have slack capacity, you could legislate that a person needs to have been on the railway or at least railway adjacent with some knowledge of operations practice to be eligible for the top job at a railway company.
Yeah, but the issue with that is that a lot of these railways are owned in majority or in significant part by investment companies, investment bankers, who are the scum of the earth, especially politically.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I'm not denying that. That's one of the results of the.
It's
I
a case
think
of
it was the
most of the
process.
issues in the American
I have
network
a- yeah, I
can
have-
be put
I
down
have
to.
words on that as well, but if I start discussing that, we're going to violate the no politics.
Yeah.
Arthur,
I
can we
think-
fucking move on?
Oh, we can do. Yeah. I think
Yes,
we've. I
right.
think. Yeah,
She's getting
no,
bored of
no,
your.
no.
She's getting bored of your anorak.
Any more train questions, please? Beep out.
Anoraks.
Locoboses.
Hey, I
Thank you.
don't make fun of Azure Lane fanatics, do I?
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
You do.
Yes, you
No, I don't. I say
Every time a Zorlane question comes up, you make weeb shit and not wanting to do it remarks.
no. I say it's not something that I like. That doesn't mean I don't. That doesn't.
Yeah,
mean-
you do
Indeed.
whatever you can to get out of them, despite the fact that Knight asked the question specifically for us. So you can't get out of them.
Like they spend their hard-earned time carefully crafting these
Oh,
questions
don't
for
you
please.
dare turn into Dr. Clark and use that language. I
Oh, I
swear
don't.
to God,
Oh, I
am-
don't need.
I.
Oh, I don't need to
That
get
is
into it.
exactly his turn of phrase, and I won't have it. Not while he's not here.
Oh, really?
Oh, look who just
Oh,
showed
really?
It's truly
You
important.
summoned him, Flink.
In a nice
Oh, for the love of
way.
God, where did he spring from?
You know, he's been in the chat. He's been in the audience a while, Fleet. But why you know that rant about Dragon not being him? Being like him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I am glad my training has succeeded in helping them.
This is my life now.
Yes, it is.
Whoopee. Right,
Please, more
anyway,
trains.
so, I'll have to, I'm sorry, Timu, I'm gonna have to skip your YouTube question, because it is another rail-related one, but that's okay, because the next question we have to do is your Patreon question, so it's alright. Timu Locker asks, how many
That's
ships...
good. Can I just say a small apologies to everyone? Just a small apologies to everyone, because today's video, which was supposed to go live today, has corrupted on upload to YouTube, so I'm going to have to re-edit and reformat it.
That's an oof. That's
That- That's the almost 2.5 hour long HMAS Vampire video.
vampire.
Which includes,
Which one?
includes a scene of myself and Drac playing with a shell.
Oh, good lord. That's why it corrupted. It couldn't handle the wholesomeness. Also,
Also,
you need
also,
to be
before we
careful.
start-
You need to be careful, Alex. With the panel we've got, as big as it is, if you say his name too much, you'll summon him, and I don't think I can handle both of you at the same time, bashing my head over with a sledgehammer.
Right.
Don't
worry.
Don't.
Also, I've got a complaint about yesterday.
You realise Drac and I
here.
Yeah. You realise Drac and I agree on the subject that if people are kind enough to ask us questions about subjects, if they kind enough to want our opinion on things, we owe it to them to go and research it so we can better answer their questions.
Are you going to keep hounding me with this until I go and watch Azure Lane?
No.
And that's
Until you
why
play.
I, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. this morning, was watching Tanks and Panzer, because I'm now getting questions about Tanks and Panzer.
Oh,
Brilliant.
girls and Panzer, but yes.
Also, Fleet.
Girls
about
and
that, you
Panzer.
chose-
I'll get there eventually with it, but it was
Oh.
honestly
the worst maintenance team possible.
Honestly, Foxo, I think if this is what Dragon likes to relax by watching, I think he needs to feed you more food. I think
Yeah, but then she
you
complains
deserve
I'm
more food.
But then to quote, I'm called a mean person for making her have to eat food so she doesn't forget to eat for 2 days straight.
Yes, but what food were you making her eat?
Usually whatever she wants.
I would fleet
He
on
was
this
making
one.
me eat
That's
vegetables.
What? No, I said
You
I told
need
you to
to
get
eat-
food.
Oh,
you need to eat-
Vegetables
You need to eat vegetables. I love a good cucumber and lettuce salad.
in the nicest way. You are talking to me here. There's also Drac who would happily show up and say, "We will both tell you that a carnivore diet works very well. Thank you very much."
I completely disagree. I couldn't live without my vegetables.
My entire supply of vegetables comes from Iron Brew.
I like my
Okay,
cucumber
that-
and lettuce
That's a
salad.
maneuver.
All minerals and vitamins not contained within meat come from Iron Brew, including the preservatives which keep me this young and healthy.
Right. Anyway, so
Oh,
so
before
before
you
Those
talking
should be in
foxhole law last
Cold
night
less than
sent
Baron
me to
Doyle.
sleep.
So
You sent me to sleep.
Shall we get the
can
next
we-
question?
Yes, because it's the one that Timu has as his
Yeah, it is
right
Timu's
as
special.
the,
So yeah,
as his
give him the question.
Fleet's Fantastic Thunder.
Mhm.
So, Timu Locke asks, how many
Thank you.
ships that took part in the Battle of Trafalgar can our fleet of oceans name from both sides? Right, and I have not cheated. I'm going off knowledge that I know and not looked it up because it would be unfair otherwise because it wouldn't be in the spirit
Okay,
of the
before you
question.
start us off, Dragon, what's the odds that he has the Wikipedia page open in front of him?
Oh, 40-60.
50-50.
I do.
I like to be slightly generous and say 40-60.
Dragon,
I will be
let's be
taking
real.
bet at 5 to 1.
Right, Dragon, let's be real. He's too lazy to do the prep for this.
No, listen.
So he's not good at open.
Come on.
Okay, Bosco, you're not wrong.
It wouldn't even be the spirit of the question anyway.
If there's one thing college
Oh.
taught me, it's that cheating takes effort. And it's easier just to revise at that point.
It really is. It really is.
But come on then, Fleet.
Right.
Let us hear it.
So, Victory, Santos of Trinidad,
That's the 4-decker one, right?
yes, that's the 4-decker, Provence, oh, come on, Fleet, I can see the words in front of me. Oh, for God's sake, come on, not now! I had like a list of 10 names. I had like a list of 10 names in my head, and it's gone. No.
Oh, come on. Not
Come
even
on.
the special one that's
I
on the
Raise
side.
down on.
Oh, come on!
I'm
I
giving you
had
a
to.
hint here, Fleet.
I know.
Open for
I guess
DLC.
raise down on. Ah,
I can't hear that. You cut out.
No,
I
Fleet,
guess
think
Let
it
of
the
it.
rain
rains down
fall
on.
in.
The
Stop.
rain's falling.
Africa.
What's the song?
Africa.
Clark, isn't the
God
issue
help.
that a lot of the times the rains don't fall down there
Africa.
nowadays?
They do, but the song was the only thing I'd be able to help with that one.
Bellerophon. Bellerophon. There's the other one. Oh, come on. I can see the name in my
It's on-
head. It begins with a
It's on the
B.
£10
Name-
note.
Temeraire.
Fleet, name any. Okay.
Um,
Fleet, name any Spanish battleship you know the name of.
Hispania. Jami the. Surely there's not a. Of course there'll be a Palaio there. Why wouldn't there be a Palaio there? That does not be surprising. Of course there's a bloody Palaio there. There's actually, and given it's pre-18. When it's pre-1820s, I could also probably rattle off a few colonial names as well. Havana's probably a good guess.
You do,
Um,
you do realize they all have an obsession with the Greek mythology at this period, right?
Oh yes, I know. So names like Bellerophon. Well, Hercules obviously wouldn't be one because that's not the ship of the line name. No one suspects the Spanish battleships. Well said, Poseidon. What can I say?
The battleships work for Royal Navy battleships as well, honestly.
Look, what's got the heel bloke? The guy that got shot in the heel.
Like, well, yeah, obviously Achilles.
Thank you.
I'm actually surprised there wasn't a revenge at Trafalgar.
There wasn't a revenge. That's what. That's
What
Considering how,
what
funnily
about,
considering
enough,
how
you know,
common
some
the
of the-
name Revenge is in the Royal Navy,
Repulse.
it wasn't actually
Warspite,
present.
Repulse, Warspite.
HMS Revenge was, I think, one of the flagships of the fleet waiting in the Channel Squadron.
Yeah, just
For if
in
the fleet
case-
got past, if they
what
got
about another
past
R-class?
Nelson, there was another
Another
squadron
R-class.
sitting in the Channel. Hello, we're twice their size.
Royal Sovereign.
There.
Sovereign of the Seas, I think. I think there was another.
Not
Sovereign.
there.
No.
Oh, was she?
There's a
elsewhere?
Royal Sovereign. There's not a Sovereign of the Seas. No, Sovereign of the Seas was the predecessor name of the Royal Sovereigns.
Oh, I thought they.
That's how name got.
Didn't
That's
they-
what name got translated. Sovereign of the Seas had
There were two ships,
Well-
weren't there? Called Sovereign of the Seas.
no. After the Dutch took the Sovereign of the Seas, the British used the next follow-up name was Royal Sovereign.
Ah, right. I see. Very clever. Okay. So yeah, that's.
You want some help?
Look, I could just go and look it up, but I feel like I have to be honest and admit that I don't know.
But is that basically where
Okay.
you're putting your limit at the moment for what you can remember off the top of your head?
Yes, and look, look.
Okay.
Hey, look. At least I was honest about it and didn't go looking
Yes,
for the
that is
names.
that is indeed, well, that is at least good on you.
Because that
But
was the whole point of the question. Look, I
Okay,
am not a naval historian. I am a generalist and an introduction to the hobby for people who want to come. I then point people at Dr. Clark and Drac and say, these people are eminently more skilled than me and are specifically naval historians. I am a generalist. I am familiar with the Age of Sail. I am familiar with the Ironclad era. I am familiar with the all-steel battleship. I am familiar with tanks, artillery, aircraft. I am familiar with locomotives. I am not an expert in any field. I am
I'm really
I
glad
would
you
like
didn't.
to point out that before we carry on, though, I would like to say there are some really cool names in the Battle of Trafalgar in the Royal Navy squadrons. There's HMS Conqueror, which is under command of Captain Israel Pellew.
Oh God, no, Pellew, leave the French fleet where it is. Leave it alone.
There is HMS Ajax under the command of Lieutenant
crowbar
John
wielder.
Pilford.
Oh God.
There is HMS Ajax under Lieutenant John Pilford because the captain.
Oh, good lord.
There is Orion under Captain Edward Coddington, and there is Minotaur under Captain Charles Mansfield. Oh, and by the way, if you want to know where we get our Lafaurie class destroyers from the captain of HMS Spartite, who was Captain Sir Francis Lafaurie.
Oh.
Okay, quick question. Was this the time period of John French?
There are some interesting things.
John French.
There is
Was
also
an actual battle where John French is right alongside the French?
Oh, just like, who are you? I'm
Well,
John French. What do you mean you're French? That's right, I'm John
It-
French.
It gets better when you start being a fan of fiction, because there's Captain William Hargood of the Belial,
Oh.
and there's Captain George Hope of Defence, and there's Lieutenant John Stockholm, who's acting captain of the Fondra, because there are two captains who are ill.
Stockholm Syndrome.
Also, you also have to remember Blackadder. Well, it's not Blackadder, but it is Blackwood in charge of Euralis.
I know there are actual Blackadders, and I'm sure one of them must have been a captain at some point in the Royal Navy's history. There are actual Blackadders that exist.
It gets more interesting when you start to talk about some of the French, because Boussencheur's captain was Captain Jean-Jacques Magagedi.
Yes.
And then there's Redoubtable, who's Captain Jean-Jacques Etienne Lucas. And you start going through the names, you're going, you guys sound far fancier than your British counterparts. You just sound so much more fancy.
Yeah.
And there's the Santa Ana, whose Vice Admiral border is Vice Admiral Ignacio Maria de Alvia Leonarete. Whose captain under command of him is Captain Don Jose de Gagliucchi.
Oh, good lord. Stop! Oh, God, the names! The names! Oh, fleet.
And there's HMS Berwick, which is being captured by the French, so it's actually under the command of the French, this battle. It's under the command of Captain Jean-Gilles Philhol de Camas.
Oh, my God. Let me guess. Did he give someone their comeuppance? It's alright, I'll see myself
no,
out.
he
I'll see myself out. It's fine.
I'm going to hit you, Flea,
How about
very
Someone
hard.
shoot this man.
He was hit during the Battle of Trafalgar by a round shot and killed instantly, with his body being cut in two pieces.
That's
So he
sad.
got his comeuppance
I
in the battle.
I believe
Very nice.
that's a paddling.
Like, are we sure he's not Polish? Because that sounds like quite the partition.
Oh,
Oh, but yeah, the number of French officers who died, including, of course, Commodore Jean-Baptiste Joseph René Poulon, who was in charge of the Heros, a two-decker 74. Oh,
Okay, so after that brief divergence, on with for God's sake, I can't. Give me a minute.
No.
don't worry. You know,
Oh,
you had
Fleet's got a
the
fun one
question-
next.
You had the question from Timu on the Battle of Trafalgar. You still got the question from me on the Battle of Trafalgar.
And Wellesley.
You've got to stop. I've already
also
told
Wellesley.
you.
Well, my-
How many times do
my
I have to say I'm not a navalist?
How many
But
times
you
did I have
do
to see you in
Fleet's
Empire
Random
at War?
Ramblings. You do Fleet's Random Ramblings on a naval history Discord server.
I know. This is where it started.
So yeah, this question is really easy. Who was the captain of HMS Africa?
I don't know.
Error.
Look, if Foxo or Dragon know this is going to be really embarrassing
can't-
for you, and you
I
might
can't
have
answer
to
it because
them
at the
be
time
in charge.
I can't answer because I was looking at the actual orders
You
of
know,
battle, so it does say.
They might actually have to take the lead of the show if
Like
they know
hell.
this, because
Like hell they will. This is
Because
my
Wouldn't be the
show.
they'll
First time
actually
we've done
have
it.
more naval knowledge. So if Fox or Dragon know it before you do, who
I
is the
said
captain later?
I said I can't legally answer
What's
because I don't have it in front of
it?
me.
It's that Digby bloke, isn't it? Oh
Yeah.
god.
You're right with the second name.
Is it Harry Digby?
You're very
Close.
close. Go for a different H name.
Henry?
Excellent. Henry Digby. Foxo wins. Foxo's in charge for the next 10 questions.
No, she bloody well isn't.
Dr. Clark, call the motion.
No, you
Oh, there's any
All
bold
in
of,
favour-
bold of you
I've-
to assume this is a democracy.
No.
Well,
No,
this
it's
is
a
a
council.
coup.
That's why I called the motion.
This is not a
Yeah, well, you
democracy.
What you see, thing is, you're
I
a
love
weak monarch
democracy.
and I'm an
I love the
entrenched
Republic.
regent now.
Like hell.
Okay, I can change the topic. Foxo's random ramblings.
No, no.
Actually, we had a title for that. We had the
Leave
Fox box. No, we actually had a
Leave-
title. It's the Fox box.
Well, to be fair, when Ramblings moves to my server on after the 21st of May, the slot will be open.
Right, so
That's
please, I'll hand you control back, but when my question comes up, you have to answer it.
Can I answer it now so it doesn't get missed? Because otherwise I'm worried I'll miss it. What? Oh, you...
You're mean, Foxo.
Well, funny thing
Do you
is...
prefer to give,
well,
give Foxo control for 10 questions than answer this question?
Well, no. First of all, I know the answer to this one, but I will say I answer it under duress because it's about religion, and I hate religion. But anyway, as to what King David did in front of God to praise him, he danced uproariously.
He danced with all his might.
Yes, which is the same thing. But
Not really.
I've heard it.
Dancing uproariously suggests you're discoordinated.
I've heard it described both ways. The Bible I read it in was dancing uproariously. Probably was a
Yeah,
off
I mean,
kilter
it's a
translation.
it's a translation issue at this point.
Yeah.
It's-
That's the thing with parents is King
Unless we
David
want to go
Bible, but-
into the original Hebrew or whatever. I mean,
Right, so having
Next
actually
question.
having reclaimed my throne. So this,
Short term.
YouTube, the long term. YouTube.
Well, you're going to love the next one.
I suppose it'd be Knight's question. As I've been dabbling with the non-declined British Emperor and Azur fic, I'm at 1995 and the Empire's unrecognisable. Good. It shouldn't be recognisable. And I'm struggling with how to make a fascist...
Dabbling with on-decline and British Empire.
Yeah, and I'm struggling with how to make a fascist USA work. You don't. The USA is one of those
US.
states. The US is one of those states that I would say, is basically... You fundamentally cannot turn the entire nation fascist. At least not the entire country, owing to the way the US is. If
liberals with guns.
if the government goes fascist, there will be breakaway states that will declare the government illegitimate. If the states go fascist, and if some states go fascist, other states will decide that they didn't sign up for this nonsense. You can't turn the entire United States fascist. You can go arch-conservative United States with an elected arch-conservative government, but you can't have a fascist-style quasi-dictatorial state. Even Italy is too far towards... Even the Italian model under Mussolini is still too far towards incompatibility with the United States.
I think it's more intriguing is you could have fascism take over certain states. There are some states which could fall to fascism quite easily because, and it's going to sound strange because it's the same with the communism. The risk is not states which are necessarily right or left leaning. It's states which are it's political areas where they are prone to groupthink, where they tend to have more momentum than thought. So this is the point. People often look at left-wing or right-wing politics and go, oh, these people are going fascist, or these people are going communist, or those things. And that's not really the thing. What you want to look at is where there are states or nations where they are prone to, we have made this decision, now we will just follow it to its natural conclusion.
Yes. Look, this is what I say when I say you can get some states that will probably, very likely, adopt extreme points of view. But I can't see the entire United States as a unitary entity going that way.
Having visited there, I'd actually say one of the states which would most likely to fall would probably be California.
Yeah, they are prone to
because their politics is prone to great lurches.
Texas as well.
Especially over the period we're talking about, 20s and 30s. No, Texas, no. There's a very simple reason why Texas, no.
They are prone to groupthink in Texas.
No, they are prone to arguing with each other. It looks like groupthink, but it's not groupthink. They are arguing with each other. In the nicest way, the moment you get out of Austin, in Texas, they spend most of their lives arguing with each other. And that's the difference. If you go to California, if you go and deal with... Whilst there are parts of California where they will argue non-stop with you, especially because of the industries, that a lot of them has been... A lot of their periods in the 1920s and 30s we're talking about were built around. It was very much an imagery-based politics. We're talking, by the way, before anyone starts going, we're not talking about Texas today or California today. We're talking about Texas and California in the 20s and 30s. That's what we're talking
history
about.
And doesn't fall under the rules.
Yes.
Yes, but also, it's before people start reacting going, oh no, we're not like that today, or we're not like that. No, we're not talking about you now. We're talking about what your politics were like in the 20s and 30s. And if you want a good look, there are some states in the 20s and 30s who are literally, they know they've got so much rampant corruption going on in their state government, but as it's all being paid for by companies, they don't care. They just elect the most colourful character they can to be governor, and these sorts of things. And you can literally, there are some very interesting politics there.
The Pennsylvania Railroad basically ran the state.
Yes. And the thing is, with Texas in the 20s and 30s, in the nicest way, you try and explain fascism to the cattle barons and the oil barons. The idea that the state should tell them what to do. Ain't not happening in the 20s and 30s. Whereas, if you're a movie maker, or some of the other industries which were in California at this time, and you go, well, fascism's kind of useful.
Knight, you can't apply Project 2025 to any point prior to the current US. It is something.
No, you really can't.
It is something fundamentally born of 30 years of post-Cold War US politics.
And it also is fundamentally born of social media age politics and sound bites versus substance. And that is by the way, before anyone starts thinking this is a critique just of that, it just to look at any of the politics which has come out of the last couple of years, anything around elections. Once you go below the first paragraph, and especially the paragraph which is littered with 140 characters or less phrases you can stick out, you find very little detail of substance below there. Because they don't need to. Because they have successfully persuaded people that they should get their political information in the smallest medium of form of media possible.
Yep.
Now, I'm all for democratization of media, and I'm all for getting more voices involved. But I used to like the blogosphere and the great big video logs on YouTube and those things.
Yeah.
I don't know. The obsession with making it fit into 140 characters or 60 seconds of a video really annoys the out of me. And then people start doing it with history.
Yeah.
And that's even worse, because history is often more complicated than one sentence.
Yes.
I do think you're you're not giving... I don't want to sound like a talking points about fascism here, but springs up differently in functionality in every country it sort of forms in.
Yes.
And like, if the greater, like, if people like Huey Long sort of get going, like, do you think you would see in America with, like, say, an empowered executive
So basically, you're
who
looking
can
at
de facto rule the country?
you're basically looking at sort of, well, what I could only describe as longism, which isn't fascism per se. It's
There again, all the fascisms were slightly different. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There was Mussolini's fascism, which is what's actually is true fascism because the original one. Then there's France. Then there's
Franco's.
Francoism. Honestly, let's be honest. It's really not. It's really not fascism the same
honestly,
way as Mussolini's is not Hitler's.
honestly, Dr.
And-
Clark, Francoism isn't even fascist. It doesn't even come under the fascist
It is.
umbrella.
It is. I'm sorry.
It's just an extension of strongman Spanish politics that we've seen countless times before. You saw it during the
Yes and no. It has some. It certainly has some tenets with the methodologies and the. I would call
it's
the
Spanish
industrial
fascism.
industrial versions of fascism. And this is the thing: fascism takes a different role. You should look at the fascist parties which tried to form in Switzerland and what they were all about. They are really weird because they believe in a version of fascism which doesn't have the strongman central government.
good lord, canton fascism. What's next?
Basically, that's what they're talking. That's what they're going for. They want pluralistic democracy combined with fascism.
Where does it end?
This is the fun I have with people who start using fascism and start explaining this is fascist or that's fascist these days. I go, do you actually know what is fascist? Because one of the things you have to do is you have to work out what's fascist for your country. And because if you diagnose something as fascist when it isn't fascist, and you try and treat it as if it's fascist, it's like if you diagnose the wrong disease as a medical doctor and you're treating the wrong thing. You're going to end up pumping a patient full of a lot of drugs, which probably aren't going to work. Or if they are, they're going to best mask the systems and mask the symptoms rather than actually allowing you to cure it.
Yes, please ensure that things are cured properly. Do not falsely diagnose your fascism, otherwise you may treat it with the wrong dose of communism, and that can lead to wrong things.
No, actually, the antidote, the communism and fascism both have pretty much the same antidote, which is centralist democracy. But it has to be centralist democracy, which is actually defended. People have to defend the centre. They have to defend the right to have a moderate debate, and that's the trouble. Making the case for the boring stuff. This is why I often joke that if ever me and Drac, or well, me mainly, but Drac occasionally does consider himself also to form a political party, it would be called the boring but competent party.
Yeah, probably.
And that would work in the UK because you can't imagine the BBC turning down any party called the BBC from turning up on Question Time.
Yep.
And being a moderate middle of the road. How about
Yeah.
Not quite how about both sides, but it fits with what we at least pretend Britain should be.
Yeah, like for example,
Yeah.
so what are you going to
And
do?
plus, a
Labour.
party called boring but competent would probably actually at this point be so attractive to the British
Yes,
public.
it
We'd
would.
probably end up getting about 80% of the
I'd
vote.
vote for it. I'd vote for it.
Hey, wait a minute! I just realized I'm a UK citizen. I can vote for it now.
Since when are you a UK citizen?
Like a couple of months ago, at least.
Also, well done for choosing the right country.
Indeed.
But-
Welcome, welcome to the UK. We are not completely in the toilet yet.
Under Dr. Clark's leadership.
Shall we get the next question?
Yes. So after all that funny nonsense, Admiral Wellesley, had the IJN used the lessons learned about submarines during the Great War, how would that have changed the Pacific Front? I mean, they did. They took their own lessons from the use of submarines during the Great War. It's what informed their doctrine of using their submarines. The only lesson you could be referring to is one about raiding commerce, and as myself, Drac, and Dr. Clark have discussed countless times, that's fundamentally useless to the IGN. What commerce are they going to raid? America going to Australia? Yes, that helps strategically, but it doesn't massively impact.
And the trouble is, those convoys are an awful long way away, and they tend to be quite well escorted.
Yeah, like
A bunch of angry Australians.
Yeah, this is why you see IJN submarines into...
No, it's also the lesser-known theatre of the Canadians.
Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, this is why you see the IGN with maybe like a half tranche of submarine development off to the side. So you've got the large boats that are designed to go out at speed. The reason they go for 19-20 knots of surface speed is so that their cruising speed is in the teens. It's not 10 or 11 knots, it's 13 to 14 knots. So your transit time at efficient speed is faster out into the Pacific to get to your patrol lines, to basically lie in wait for enemy surface forces. And then you have the other tranche of IGN submarine development, which are the boats that are equivalent to what people like the Germans, the Italians, the British are building. So 1,000, 1,500 tonners, boats that can work around the South Pacific, in the China Sea, based out of Singapore, Japan proper. Not small submarines by any means, but small compared to the large boats designed to go roving off into the middle of the Pacific from Japan proper. And then, of course,
We can all agree that what the Japanese really needed was submarines to be operate off the west coast of the United States, because then they could have achieved some Commonwealth warfare, and they could have achieved some very interesting results, especially considering if the Americans had started World War II and found themselves dealing with the Germans on the East Coast and the Japanese on the West Coast, and both causing them trouble at the same time, the shouts of anger and fury would have been legendary. Also, the sheer number of Flower-class corvettes, which were probably bought from the British, would have been massive.
yeah.
Because, I mean,
That would
literally,
have been very interesting to see.
because the Americans bought several of them from the British anyway, and River-class frigates and all sorts of escorts as well to make up their small escort numbers, because the British had mature programs which were churning those out, and they needed as many as they could get their hands on. And the thing is, there was a very interesting point of discussion where basically the offer is from the British Empire: we can build an extra 100 of each of these at the same time if you need us to. Chuck them on.
Mm-hmm.
And that would probably have had been what happened, and then you probably
Another
That's what you
Corvette
might
on the
get-
Barbie.
you probably get a lot more Flower-class corvettes preserved, because knowing the US Navy, if they got really attached to them, then it wouldn't just be poor Sackville being the last corvette. There'd be an American one surviving as well somewhere.
Yep.
Probably sitting in a Florida swamp, with Florida Keys or the Florida swamps or something like that, going,
Yeah.
"Hello, I have a lovely life."
It'll be with the US Coast Guard.
Yeah,
'Cause
probably.
let's be real.
Yeah.
Why the Cold War Coast Guard cutters are Flower class
Yeah.
in a close similarity?
So,
I mean,
next
the
question.
other thing is, would the U.S. try and license the design to build some of their own?
Probably
Well,
not.
no. The reason they didn't was literally because if they were setting up so many production lines as it was for other things like destroyer escorts, etc., they didn't have the spare capacity to build more of these. The British, because also
that's why
they had to set up the whole production line. No, license build doesn't help. They don't have the spare production yard facility.
Okay.
They don't have the facility. Whereas the British and the Canadians and the parts of India and Australia which are building these vessels all have the space to build more. They just need to get more components coming into them to do it. They just need to allocate the resources. So this is why the Americans actually did take on several corvettes, and historically they did actually buy about a dozen or so under Lend-Lease. It's one of the things forgotten under Lend-Lease was that a lot of these things went to the Americans from the Allies because the Americans needed them. Because also there's the time spent to set up these production lines, and the thing is, the British and the Commonwealth, the Empire production lines are all working already. So it's kind of like when we're talking about the modern submarine program and Australia buying submarines and how to get submarines. It's far easier to go and insert yourself into the American production line or the British production line, which is already producing submarines, than to set your own up.
Yeah. I was
And it's
thinking
more quicker.
if the limiting factor was components, then
No, the limiting factor for the Americans was sheer capacity.
Yeah.
Sheer capacity to build. You have to decide, okay, well, if we want to start churning these out, we've got to take a yard off doing Liberty ships. We've got to take a yard off or we've got to build a whole nother new yard and then maxed out all the two ocean Navy yards they've been building. You know, this is the funny thing is when you start talking about this, you start realizing that even America has a capacity.
Yeah.
There is so much history which is based around America is this
you know-
limitless capacity, and even they have a limit. Full turrets?
Okay.
Oh, hello?
Yes, you're here.
It went quiet. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Shall we grab the next one?
Yes.
Yeah,
So from
here we
Brandon
go.
Larson, what if that is right, isn't it? Hang on. We just.
It should be on YouTube, shouldn't it?
Oh yes, it should. Thank you. I'm just checking so I know where I am. Blackburn Maximus asks, considering the focus on cruisers and torpedo boats by the French during the Genocole period, how did the French cruisers compare to other nations' cruisers during this same period? Usually fairly. The French had a real big focus on protected cruisers during the Genocole period, and they did create some fairly good ones. But what I will say, is you see the French really start to sort of lean into, so everyone else's cruisers are doing 18, theirs might do 19. Fairly heavily armed ships,
Pardon me.
and somewhat large for the period. The French get in on the ground floor when it comes to protected cruisers, with Sifax coming in right at the start of the period when the protected cruiser becomes a thing. They follow a different line to Elswick. So, as I'm sure you're aware, one of the first protected cruisers that we think of when we think of that type of ship is the Emerald, which is built for Chile.
Pretty much the first one.
Yeah.
Is built for Chile. Pretty much the first one of what we consider to be a protected cruiser is built
Yeah.
for Chile.
And then, of course,
Is
the French...
is Emerald.
And then following...
Which ends up serving with the Japanese at the Battle of Tsushima. We'll
Yeah.
leave that to one side.
But following behind her with a different train of thought is Sifax. Sifax is France's take on the protected cruiser. And what she is she's a larger vessel than Emerald, very much designed as a first-class cruiser for work overseas. Emerald's a good ship, don't get me wrong, but she's somewhat small. Sifax is arguably the first-class protected cruiser that sets the standard for that style of ship. She carries lots of rapid-fire guns, so 6-inch guns, 5.4-inch guns, and she carries torpedo tubes. She's designed to be a ship that can tangle with anything that is smaller than her with a comfortable margin of superiority and come out on top. She flat out obliterates the colonial sloops and unprotected cruisers that have been the centerpiece of most nations' first-class cruising forces for some time. And then, of course, you see the British and everyone else follow on behind her. And she sets the standard, so French protected cruisers are usually... they're usually vessels of a fairly decent size, so usually above 4,000 tons. They usually carry 6.4 and 5.4-inch guns in fairly significant numbers. They're usually, but not always in this period, fairly quick ships. So you're talking about ships in the 1880s that will... so Sifax is slow, because she's an early 1880s ships. But after her, you see them start breaking 19 knots, which in the 1880s is that's no bad achievement for cruisers in that period. Then you've... And again...
Breaking 19 knots... The phrase breaking 19 knots is doing a lot of work for you there.
It is, isn't it? It's great.
Also, I'm hearing a very nice advertising for the French cruisers. You're not forgetting their habit of breaking down in inconvenient places because their boilers had issues, are you?
Of course not.
Or the fact that whilst you have talked about how powerful Sifax is, the fact is that she was actually the Esmeralda, not Emerald, the Esmeralda.
Sorry, I'm thinking of the other one.
Had more firepower than her, and could actually beat her in a fight. And Yeah, two 10-inch guns and 6-inch guns, the same as the 6-inch guns on the Cephx. The trouble is, our 5.4-inch guns didn't have the range to max in with 6-inch guns. So, yeah, unfortunately, the Esmeralda's winning that fight comfortably.
I problem is, yes, you have the two 10-inch
There's
guns,
also the fact that
but
Esmeralda is faster than the Saphax by a good,
yeah,
not a couple, not a bit.
That is true. But I will say that I still like you've
The
got...
more fun I'm going to have is with the fact that you're talking about the French armor cruisers produced in Junacol, and they are
armored
they are
cruisers.
lovely ships.
I'm talking about the protected cruisers, not the armored.
Protected cruisers. Yeah, the armor cruisers are even worse. I misspoke. But the protected cruisers, how do I put this politely? The main trouble you have with it is the French approach each one like they are these one-off special editions.
That is very true. I'm not going to deny that. They don't build proper classes of them.
This means they don't actually work well until you get to what theoretically is the first class they have on them, which are the Forbins, which displace how much?
Yeah, the Forbins are definitely third-class cruisers, and I'm not going to deny that.
They're the same size as the tribal class destroyer was officially supposed to be.
Yeah.
Actually, realistically, smaller than most of the tribal class destroyers were.
I think they're the first third-class protected cruisers that the French build, aren't they?
Yes, but this amazing class contains all of 3 members: Forbin, Surcouf, and Courtledron.
Yeah, but then again, they're third-class cruisers anyway, which, as we all know, it's a concept that lasts about 5 years in relevance and then just fundamentally falls apart.
Yes, and for some reason the French go all in on them with the Forbins, the Trude, and the Jean Bart class.
The Jean Barts, I think, the Jean Barts, I would say, more fall into second class. They're just that bit bigger, and they're just that bit more powerful. I think they're second class cruisers. They're not full first class, but they're not third class. They've just got that much. They've got to step up in firepower and size.
That's what you were to claim.
I mean,
and then you have, of course, the Alger. If you're going to say the 2, I'd say closer to 2.5 class than they are second class.
Yeah, fair enough.
Remembering the standards that were established for what was a first class, a second class, and a third class protected cruiser in this period were mostly established by actually, let's be honest, the Italians, the British, and the Russians. And the Italian ones especially, I would say, are far better examples of the variations than probably pretty much anyone else's.
Yeah.
The Italians probably produced the cornerstone protected cruiser of the period.
Yeah. Although it does seem that the French do actually seem to get their act together and start building cruisers in batches of 3, which is better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's not
That's
perfect.
after the Alger.
Yeah, it's not perfect, I grant you, and they do have a lot of missteps along the way. But they're not terrible ships. They're ships to maintain an empire, I think. And I would have liked to have seen what the
I would say they're more ships which are designed to refight the Franco-Prussian War, but we'll leave that to one side.
You're probably not wrong there. Like that, I'm not even going to disagree with. That's... Yeah, so... Yeah, and then of course you've got the last classes of protected cruiser that they end up building. And then, again, it's back to a few one-offs and this and that. They weren't bad ships, but they weren't what I'd call world beaters, shall we say. Like, the French started strong with a few fairly good first-class protected cruisers, and then they sort of dropped the ball, and then they kept kicking it while trying to pick it up, resulting in the fact that the ball did move, but they weren't carrying the ball. So yes, they were going forwards, but their designs were nowhere near as good as they could have been.
Yeah. Basically,
Not
the
very good at
last one is
metaphors,
the.
are you, Fleet?
Pardon?
Uh,
That was a pretty good metaphor, I think.
I would say the fact that you basically the Jurin de la Gravière, is pretty much for me not much of an improvement over the suffix. Suggests that they haven't really worked that much.
I mean,
It is now a 23-knot vessel with 3 triple expansion engines providing its power and all those things, but it's still armed with 8 6.5-inch guns as its primary armament.
I mean, yes,
Its
but
deck armor is actually lighter. It's only between 10 and 45 mils.
true, but this is
Its
a ship
gun shields are
using
also
steel armor.
not that. Yeah, but the guns are better as well. So are the shells. Saying your armor's better is great. Have the weapons stay the same. If they haven't, then there's no value in that. Relative to the thickness.
Damn it.
And again, she's commissioned in 1901. She's able to do 22.88 knots in theory. But that's only when she's supplied with very good quality coal.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think me and Dr. Clark have covered that fairly well.
I would say the problem with the French cruisers period is that in many ways they are building ships which are half inspired to fight the Franco-Prussian War again, but they're building from a theory which is built around fighting the Royal Navy.
Which doesn't really work. You can't put those two theories together. I think that's a very good way of summing it up, actually. That's a really good...
When you consider that very shortly after this, the Royal Navy will have battleships which can go almost as fast as these armored cruisers.
Yeah, these aren't even the armored cruisers, that's the...
No, the protected cruisers, which are supposed to be faster than the armored cruisers.
Yeah, it's...
Supposed to be.
Yeah, it's...
And, yeah, I know. It just confuses me when you realise these ships are not going as fast as they should be.
Yeah.
When you look at the speeds the Royal Navy ships are doing and the Italian ships are doing.
And you do scratch your head and go, France, the whole point of Ginecole is to build fast cruisers that are more powerful than your contemporaries. That's the whole point. And you couldn't even do that. God damn it, France.
And, you just think about the inefficiency of her. The last one, she has 24 water tube boilers.
I know.
And she produces 17,400 indicated horsepower.
I know.
I don't know much about steamship power plants, but that doesn't sound good.
Right, very quickly, so this...
When we're looking at comparing these ships, we're comparing it with its counterparts of, what the British were building at the same time, and these things, and it's not really that good.
No.
It's more a case of what did you do? Why did you do it this way? Because there are options.
Yeah.
There are options for them to be able to building. They have good qualities. They have good quality mechanics and engineers and all these things going around. But if you consider... Let's see, when was she laid down exactly? Let's be fair to her. She's laid down in 1897 and is launched in 1899. So if we look at the Royal Navy's protected cruisers of that period, roughly the same size, the closest they have is the High Flyer class, which are from... Well, no, it's the High Flyer class 1898 they're launched, and the Challenger class are launched in 1902. And for those classes, we're looking at something which is 10,000 indicated horsepower and 20 knots of speed, or 12,500 indicated horsepower and 21 knots. But basically, the British protected cruisers are designed to be station ships, so they're not really a similar policy going behind them.
Yeah.
If we're going to look for the counterparts which are going to be hoovering up the French in terms of hoovering up their cruisers. You know, at this point, the Royal Navy's already building scout cruisers. Pretty much, they're already on their way to the light cruisers. They have their first-class cruisers wandering around doing all sorts of nasty things. And first-class cruisers are basically armoured cruisers, and if you consider the first-class cruiser which the Royal Navy has in the same period being produced as that vessel's being produced, is the Diadem class, which are frankly killers for the French long-range patrol, French long-range ships, if they're actually to be used as that. And that's what they're designed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before we get on to a class which is not normally spoken of in such glowing terms, but is in terms of this role is a really good class. Is the Cressy class.
Mm-hmm.
They're built between 1898 and 1902, roughly contemporary, 21 knots top speed. But yeah, they would really not be a good thing for that vessel to come across.
Yeah. Right. Very quickly. Next question. Ooh.
One thing I will quickly point out is, because there's a question currently, there's a debate going on in the YouTube chat that by the time the Queen Elizabeth class are being built, any ship that does over 25 knots is classed as a battle cruiser.
No.
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 I wish, but no.
No. Right. Very quickly.
No.
Brandon Larson asks. This is a question. This is completely outside of my wheelhouse, and I really hope some of you have the answer to this because I have no clue. Brandon Larson asks, what if 10,000 good Narnians and 20,000 Middle-earth good factions comprising 5k Numenorians, 5k Rohirrim, 5k Elves, and 5k Dwarves, along with 20,000 troops from the good Game of Thrones kingdoms, fight 60,000 troops made up of the bad factions from each of these book series? Who wins and why? The battle is fought on an extremely large plain. All of the heroes and villains are leaving their respective armies. White Walkers and Army of the Dead don't appear. Honestly, go nuts. I'm not even.
I can barely comment apart from dwarves have guns.
Which Lord of the Rings
again?
Yes, these are Lord of the no, I don't even think they're Lord of the Rings. Yeah, they are Lord of the Rings dwarfs. So
Lord of the Rings dwarves don't have guns.
No, they have axes and they have ride hogs. Which are the armies again?
Numenorians, Rohirrim, elves, and dwarves.
Our good guys are going to absolutely crush the others. Numenorians and elves alone is already like more than half.
Yeah, I'd say Numenorians.
It's also the evil faction from Game of Thrones. And it's just, if you take out the White Walkers, there isn't really an evil one. Which means that you end up in a situation where maybe you could call the Dothraki and Targaryen dragons evil. Okay, one side has dragons, the other side doesn't.
Let's be honest, the Dothraki are basically modelled on Genghis Khan's hordes. And if you combine Genghis Khan with dragons, frankly, that's world dominating. And even more of us would share his DNA.
The Dothraki aren't really Genghis Khan, they're more Egyptian Mamluks, but I see your point.
No, I would say
it's a Seljuk.
More like they're more like.
I think Seljuk would be a comparison in that regard.
It just made me think.
I'd say Mamelukes. Not really. No, it's far more Hunnish in the imagery in the books. Which I did end up reading on a very long flight because I couldn't find anything else in the airport to buy.
They say the Lannisters are an evil faction in my question.
Well, no. Lannisters are just a selfish faction. They're all selfish. In the nicest way, the Lannisters, the thing is, whilst they're all the factions are equally complicated in many regards, and Yes, the Lannisters do add on a lot of, well, how do I put this politely? Dibbling into play. Probably a bit much for most people's taste, but let's be honest. Most people don't have a sibling who looks as good as Jaime Lannister does.
Okay.
Then again, it's just the Roman Empire.
I decided how can I best put that to make Foxo have Foxo giggle and Fleet uncomfortable, and I decided that was the best way to go.
Yeah,
Because-
Fleet is always uncomfortable. That's like
well, no.
Yes,
cheating.
but
Yes, we
how
heard
much
your
more-
we heard your comments
But-
last night.
What?
Yes, but when when Foxo giggles, Fleet gets even more scared. You can hear in his voice. It's fun.
Bold of you to assume that makes me uncomfortable or scared.
Foxo giggle, then everyone listen to his voice.
She's off again.
Slightly rising. I think he's
Fleet.
Yes, what is it?
You can try and act like you're so over this all you want,
I can because I am, but keep going.
but just wait.
For the heat of the universe, I mean, I'll be here a long time.
No,
That can be
Pretty
arranged to be
worthy.
false. Never underestimate the universe's spitefulness.
also, Fleet, I will check. What is exactly in your walls?
Oh, Mega Scro, that is funny. Oh, there's a great joke for Fleet in there.
Insulation, I think.
Shall we grab the next question, Fleet?
Fleet, the answer's asbestos.
Right, where were we? So, YouTube question.
I think it's Knight's question.
Let's have a look. Yes! Would 210mm 8.3 inch guns be what the Germans go for in a world where the 234 9.2 inch or 254 10 inch guns are the treaty heavy cruiser guns? No. No matter how the Washington naval treaties change, the Deutschlands don't. The Deutschlands remain as they are.
Wait, what do you mean the Deutschlands? This isn't referring to the Deutschlands at all. They're not even mentioned.
No, no, because he's talking about in reference to, because this is the same caliber that he used for a hypothetical Deutschland.
But it's also a
which-
caliber of gun that had been looked at for a heavy cruiser in the 10s and 20s for the
Yeah,
Germans.
if I'm wrong and Knight isn't referring to a hypothetical Deutschland that we were talking about on Brew Ships yesterday, then I will happily eat my own words. But even regardless of that, it's one of those things where I go, if the heavy
can
cruisers
likely-
of the world have 9.2 and 10-inch guns, I mean, there's an argument you could make for the 8.3, but I'd still say at that point, if you've gone with an 11-inch gun for the Deutschlands as sort of as pre-dreadnought successors, and you're looking to build into a world where you're always going to have less ships than the other powers are, and it's the Germans, and at this point probably likely the Nazi Party. I can honestly see them just going, we'll just stick with the 11-inch gun for our cruisers. Just because that's the sort of decision that, A, makes logistical sense. They don't have to develop a new caliber for their cruisers. And B, it gives them not overmatch per se, but for their heavy cruisers at least, it gives them what's a word? It's not overwhelming firepower, it's more just enough of a superiority to make up for the lack of numbers they have. Especially in a world where the treaties are as they are, and the heavy cruiser guns are 9.2 and 10-inch.
To be fair, I pity the people using the 10-inch guns.
Yeah, that's just a bad choice all round. The 10 inches.
Also, good question, Montana. Why is Foxa putting on a Dummy Mummy voice? Very good question. She is neither of these. She's an antithesis of this.
Indeed. That's my thoughts.
How would you know, Fleet?
I've been around those two long enough to know exactly what the score is.
Hmm.
Okay,
Moving on.
please. And thank you.
It's God now.
But yeah, well, actually, no. I want Dr. Clark's opinion on the cruiser gun because he is the expert here, and he knows more about German naval infrastructure. Because on the one hand, I was sort of leaning towards the 8-inch gun, or just not even an 8.3, just the same 8-inch gun we see for the Hippers. But I'm also sort of leaning towards the 11 for the reasons I already listed. But it's one of those ones where I'm going, I'm not sure.
It's a case of the Germans are faced with a problem. If they go with the 8.3-inch gun, they're basically limiting themselves to cruiser guns because there's nothing that's going to keep their heavy armaments, heavy gun industry going. So even if they go with an 8.3-inch cruiser before they build the Deutschlands, the amount of effort it's going to take and money it's going to take is going to lock them into the 8.3 for the Deutschlands. If they try and go for it after the Deutschlands, then if they're not developing an off-the-rack gun, they're in trouble, and that's going to cause issues with getting their later class of heavy cruisers into service as well. So the Hippers. So honestly, they either go all in on the 8.3, in which case the Deutschlands are going to be 8.3, the Hippers are going to be 8.3, and they're going to muck up their ability to try and build any kind of battleship later on without a massive amount of investment and research, which is probably going to delay those battleships being ordered till the Bismarck Tirpitz timeline, which means they'll probably be 15-inch gun battleships, but that'll be their first generation of heavy guns. They'll be jumping in at the 15-inch without any of the information learnt and lessons learnt of doing the 11-inch developments.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Ooh, that's an ouch. That's an ouch.
It's basically a case of they can do it, but it's not sensible for them to do it, and they usually make fairly good decisions, fairly sensible decisions.
Yeah, like the Germans are not stupid. Like this is like.
No, the Germans can be stupid. The Germans are usually good if given time to sort things out, but think things through. It's the case of when they start reacting and they've got a whole lot of committees interfering, that's when you start to get stupid decisions being made because the committees are reacting out of emotion and politics, not out of thought.
Also, we've lost Foxo. I think, did her internet just suffer a spontaneous brick?
No clue.
The fact you have no clue tells me that it's probably something like that. Otherwise, she would. Oh, she's back! Hey! I thought we'd lost you to the snow. I thought the snow had claimed another internet router.
My computer shut itself.
Did you? Has it been trying to run its fan at 100% when it hasn't been needing to again, or is it just been going? Or is it the other case where the fan just goes, "I don't need to be active. I don't care. The computer's 120 degrees."
No, no, it's alternating very quickly. It spins up, spins down, spins up, spins down, spins up, spins down.
You may want to do a full plug pull just to force it to calm the fuck down.
Die.
Oh, it's fully off. It's just I'll be on my phone for a while.
Yeah. Well, as long I hope it's okay though. Like we cannot I can think of nothing worse.
Just use the age-old solution.
Do not
violence.
I was gonna say, do not listen to him. Do not apply percussive.
Trust me, it could be worse. Mine had a critical process died error earlier.
Ooh, that's that is a proper paddling. Where are we? So Camper-Kessen, Numenor, MacGuffin.
That's how we got one of the 31s to start. We threatened to hit it with a hammer.
Brandon Larson asks, what if the Vuzan-Vong invasion occurred right at the beginning of the Great Galactic War?
The Yuzha-Vong win. And win hard.
Yeah, that's about right.
Like, the tech is not there to fight them.
Nope.
at all. There's not the infrastructure, there's not the actual leadership in place.
And
It
there's
will
not,
just-
any of the big toys.
Okay.
You need Superstar Destroyers to slug it out. Or Superstar Destroyer equivalents to slug it out with some of the larger combatants in the
Keep in
Von
mind the
fleet.
most powerful ships at this point are deemed to be stuff like the Harrower, which is like 800 meters, aka smaller than the Victory.
Yeah, the Great Galactic War is just... It's... And there's no way for them to scale up to something even like a Mandator, never mind an Executor.
And considering you would be able to say, oh, well, they've got a lot more Force users. The Yuzhar Vong literally have creatures that are immune to the Force and project anti-Force bubbles. It won't help.
Yeah, it is not the Force users that win the Vong War. They help, but I'm sorry, without Executors, without some of the Mandators that are lying around, without what's left of Palpatine's super weapons, without the Viscounts, you don't stop the Vong.
Not during the Great Galactic War, there isn't, Brackman. This is set 3,000 years plus before the Mandator comes around. This is the technically second war between the Jedi and the Republic and the Sith. The one where the Republic loses, technically.
Yes.
Starforge is already gone.
And even if it existed, it still wouldn't be much help.
Honestly, it would be amusing to all the Vitiate fanboys of Vitiate that just gets walked up by one of the Vong leaders, stabbed in the...
Yeah.
Immortal Resurrection.
Oh, Dragon's Mike is really having a moment.
Right, considering I'm having to basically hold the cable like it's a violin currently.
I'm with you. Like, I'm 100% with you on that. It sucks ass.
The jack won't help. I know what the problem is. It's not something that can physically be fixed.
He has to go and get a new mic, and he can't do that right now. Probably because he's snowed in.
Well, technically speaking, I could, but I can't be bothered.
Yeah. So where are we? Next question. It's a YouTube question. So for the RN ships, 1 year of war service was equal to how many years of peacetime service? Asks Knight on YouTube. I think it was
2, as I recall.
No, it depends on what ships we're talking about. If they're destroyers, it's 6 years. If they're carriers, they're 6 years. If it's battleships, it's 4 years. If it's cruisers, it's about 2 years because of the difference of service in peacetime. You have to remember what they actually would be normally doing in peacetime versus what they'd be doing in wartime. With carriers and destroyers, it's because they spend so much of their time going around at high speed because of their operational requirements, whereas with cruisers, they're often doing cruising operations anyway in peacetime, so it's functioning less than it would. With battleships, they're usually, let's be honest, coddled to a large degree in peacetime, and then in wartime they are run ragged. So, yeah, it depends on the ship you're talking about and what their level of operation is.
Yep.
This is the trouble with me being here sometimes. I don't mean to, but I do quash the question. But that's because Knight asked me it about 4 times. So I have it well
that's
reserved.
entirely fair.
I mean, that's the
I
answer.
mean, rapid questions are good. It means we can work through more things. Brandon Larson asks, what if the militaries in Star Wars were actually accurate scale-wise, given how big the galaxy is in it? How big would they be overall?
They are accurate, technically.
Yes, they are.
If we want to exclude the idea that the clones, have something like 10 million clones, the rest of the Grand Army of the Republic is said to be in the billions plus. And that's just
basically, the clones are the crack troops.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. The battle droids are far more ubiquitous than the clones, so it really should be called the Droid War. But it's called the Clone War because they get the imagery.
Yeah.
Well, it's also because they said the Clone War back all the way in Episode 4. But I'm not thinking ahead at the time.
No.
Yeah, because really the clones make up a very small part of it. But they are the way they run the war, the clones do get all the imagery.
Yes.
Yeah, to say the least. It's in the same post-Republic period. The Empire
You're
is
gonna be
bloody huge, its forces. They say there's, right, if we go off canon, there's 25,000. If you go off Legends, there's 250,000 Star Destroyers.
And that,
There is
well, that's just Imperial
countless...
ones.
That Imperial 1s and 2s in particular. But there is countless other classes of ships. I do not even want to know how many stuff like the Gonzanti class, basically patrol cruiser there is. And calling it cruiser is honestly generous, but hey.
All that effort was over a half a biscuit, which was there. Very, very important.
Yeah, example sign just how many are Quintons? Lots.
Lots.
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
those would be, you know, everywhere.
And
This
I
is
mean,
the small bit of Star Wars I do know.
and I mean, and honestly, it makes the Dreadnought a viable ship because the Imperial Navy just has crew to throw at the problem, and that's the one thing that makes the Dreadnought horrible to operate. The amount of crew you have to throw at the problem.
Yeah, I was actually rewatching one of Clark's old videos where there was actually discussion of the ships from various different franchises, and the Star Destroyers come up. And I actually do tend to agree with the ratings. It's also an interesting thing that the Rebel Alliance do comment, if they actually manage to successfully capture a Super Star Destroyer, there is no hope in hell they could ever crew it. No matter how good of a ship they capture.
Yeah, it takes the New Republic for them to actually get the manpower to manage that feat, and that's only in Legends. So, next question. Question 3 from Blackburn Maximus. Outside of the UK, top 5 museum ships you would want to visit if money wasn't a question. Mikasa, Georgios Averof, Texas, Midway, and one more. I forgot one more. Honestly, I don't want to go see Aurora in St. Petersburg.
My list's probably not too dissimilar. It probably would be stuff like Aurora, Mikasa. Georgios Averof maybe, but Bliskovica would probably be up there, and also that one in Finland, the submarine. That one actually has caught my attention now, because that
It's
sounds
Siko.
interesting. Yep,
Oh,
thank you.
yeah, I've seen that one, so that's why it wasn't on my list.
And also, as a bit of a
Yeah,
cheat,
that's a good
I want to see the 1 to 10 Yamato, just because that sounds pretty cool.
Large lad.
I think you're all forgetting one though.
Oh, which one?
I can't remember what it's called, but it's the pre-Roman Viking longship they've got in the museum from the Viking burial in Norway.
Doesn't interest me personally.
Same. Like, it's a fascinating period of history, but it doesn't tickle my fancy like seeing the last armored cruiser in the world.
Yeah, but it's a boat older than our civilization.
I mean, for Americans, that's not that. Like, Victory's about older than civilization. It's you know, it's to a certain extent relevant, but I mean,
American civilization is just a product. It's just English civilization that went a bit wonky.
To be fair, it's technically Elizabethan civilization that went a bit wonky from Elizabeth I's time.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that seems about right.
I'm currently having fun in the YouTube chat with people who are trying to debate with me what a battlecruiser and a battleship and etc. are. It's fun.
Battlecruiser, battleships, loads.
It's basically why is Vanguard called a fully armored battlecruiser? It's because she has the full armor level, but she has a battlecruiser's hull density. So the Royal Navy can say that because at the time they're also building the Lion class fast battleships and the King George V class fast battleships. So it's not another name for a fast battleship. It's this is a fully armored battlecruiser because it has the armor coverage of a battleship the battleship end of the spectrum, but it's got the density internally of the hull design and the hull density of a battle cruiser as they were designing at the time. So it's fully armored battle cruiser. It literally does straddle the line between the battle cruiser and the fast battleship. But it is technically internally a battle cruiser. So that is what the Royal Navy classified as.
Knight, just the comment you said in YouTube about Aurora might not be around given the state of Russia. Aurora is the one thing I expect to survive no matter what. That ship is so crucial to modern Russia's existence and the core of what makes the nation what it is. In terms of how it has served and been technically on the books of every single Russian state in whatever form it has taken. And it technically founded modern Russia by firing the shots that kicked off the revolution. That ship is not going anywhere.
Wasn't it by technicality also still active?
It technically still
in
is.
active service?
It's still
Well,
technically...
kind of like HMS Victory.
Like
HMS
Victory
Victory
or-
is still technically active, you know.
Yeah,
I think there's old Ironsides is technically still...
Yeah.
And some of the New Jerseys
Avarov.
and the battle and the aircraft carriers preserved
Avarov
are all
is
still technically active.
Yeah, Avarov as well. for the Greeks.
Mikasa is technically, to an extent, active.
Is she? I thought she was explicitly not active because it was the whole thing about being trapped in concrete and removed from any naval lists.
Oh, yeah, yes, she is, but she also isn't. Because, let's put it this way, the Japanese are masters at saying something is and it isn't. They've had many years of having something be technically correct, but also at the same time, not correct.
Honestly, these ships are definitely this tonnage. Yes, please don't look any deeper into them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where were we? The museum ships. Then the next question is... Yeah, Brandon Larson. If you took a Nimitz or a Ford class hull and used 90% of the flight deck to fit VLS launchers, how many would they have? Too many.
Why?
Well, to be blunt...
Why would you
You've made
do-
a very amusing explosion.
you'd be talking...
Why would you do that?
Well, you'd be talking... I think it's
Look,
more... I think...
If you want to use the Ford class or Nimitz class hull, let's say you want to take a Nimitz class, you go, I don't want to use this as an aircraft anymore, but the hull's still got life in it. So what I'm going to do is just take the entire, strip the hangar level away, strip the superstructure away, and cut it down as much as I can, and then turn it into an arsenal ship with all VLS cells. That is a perfectly fine thing to do. But you won't make it as top heavy and all the issues of what you'd have with it of making it as high and as big a target as an aircraft carrier has to be because of fulfilling its role. That'd be silly. And also it's incredibly wasteful in terms of space and hull density and costs of running it. You could do that. You could if you wanted to put them... Let's say when Nimitz comes out of service in 2025... Later this year, you go, actually, she's got an extra 20 years of hull life in her. We just don't want to use her as a carrier anymore. So we're going to refuel the reactors. We're going to put her through that program, which is going to be fun. You're going to need to find a dry dock facility to do that, but leave that to one side. And we're going to turn her into an arsenal ship. You could do that if you really, if the hull life works out and all these things. You could do that, but you would not do it at the flight deck level. You wouldn't even do it at the hangar level. You'd cut it down because just think of the sheer amount of accommodation spaces you can get rid of if you don't have the frigating air wing there. Just think about all the people you can get away with, all the people who exist to support other people. You could make a far more sensible ship on that hull for that role.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, Beckwith, that destroyer, not the most cursed thing I've ever seen. Honestly, not that bad compared to a lot of stuff I've seen.
Considering how long we've been on we've been sharing a channel with Fleet, we've seen a lot of cursed stuff. Hosh comes up almost every week.
I
still
would object to being the punching bag, but I don't mind.
Like hell, unfortunately, I can no longer find my 4 triple-turreted destroyer, which was an all-forward design. So all the guns were in front of the superstructure.
So, moving on. 9683.
Oh, so you also
Most
built one
cursed.
of those on UAD?
Yeah.
There was a problem with one of the hulls at the time.
Dragon, please. Well, I just realised. Please tell me you're recording questions. Because I feel
Of
like
course.
I feel like I'm going to need it. 9681 asks, how much did the RN actually know about the hydrodynamics of the hull form that the battle cruisers used, and how was the fatal hydrodynamic effect not caught? What is he referring to, Dr. Clark?
Probably referring to the Drakenfell thesis, which I support and think is progress on what happened to HMS Hood. And the reality is, you can't really stop that. The Royal Navy did know it is, but there's no real way of stopping that without affecting the speed performance of the hull.
Yeah,
you're going to get a bow wave. You're going to get the reciprocal action to the bow wave somewhere along the hull.
Yeah.
You're going to get it somewhere.
It's not a
the farther you
hydrodynamic
go, the
flaw
bigger it's going
per
to get.
se, then. It's not hydrodynamic flaw per se, it's just... It's something that needs to be worked into the design. It's not a flaw per se, it's more of a design consideration.
It's a natural consequence of going that fast with something that size. By the way, if you want a good thing, go and look at a US aircraft carrier traveling at speed and look at what happens with it.
They are very nice when they're running at speed.
Look at how deep that way the reciprocal wave gets on the US aircraft carrier design. And nicest way, it's the same for everyone. If you're going that fast in a large enough object, you're going to get a significant dip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming that's what he's referring to.
That's probably what I would suspect. Admiral Wellesley on Discord asks, okay, build a Mexican Navy that can be considered a second-rate Navy, infinite funds, 14,000-ton dockyard limit, and he says in 1930. Well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm cooing the government, simply because it's Mexico in the 30s, and if I want to have any chance of my Navy not being ripped out from under me, I have to be in control of the government.
Okay.
You are aware of what Mexico was like in the 30s, you know, the Cadillos, the constant infighting, the Cristeda...
It wasn't you. It was that Mark Hartness has put something in the YouTube chat, which is my wife showed me an ad for a Thai restaurant in Ireland called Titanic, where the food goes down nice and easy, and the salads are made with iceberg lettuce.
Why?
I know. Sorry, I read that literally as the same time you were saying that, and that caused the facial reaction.
I hope that's not in Belfast.
Yeah. So the first thing that I need to do is I'm going to spend the first 2 years of my presidency pacifying the country. So naval infantry detachments will be going around Mexico, capturing and killing all the Cadillos, the regional warlords, bribing most members of parliament to ensure that I don't get disturbed. Basically fixing Mexico. And also utterly destroying the power of the Catholic Church.
Why?
Because they already rose up once. I don't want them to do it again.
Wouldn't it be better to take over the power of the Catholic Church by putting someone you have influence over in charge of them in Mexico so they can support your regime? Because let's be honest, getting the church to support you is going to help you with firming up your regime.
I mean, it would be if I wasn't utterly anti-theist. Therefore, the destruction of the church is far more useful to me.
Yeah, are you... No, let's put it this way. Are you putting personal feelings before pragmatic political decision-making?
Yes, I am, but I have infinite money.
Lead, your regime is not even going to last 2 months if you do this.
In a nicest way.
Weeks.
The phrase was, Paris was worth a mass.
Oh, that's right. Napoleon blown apart. All right.
Not even Napoleon. That's some kings of France. Paris was worth a mass.
I suppose
they might have been Protestants in their inclination, but they would sit through mass and have it if they meant they got Paris. And it's the same thing. There have been lots of monarchs who have been maybe one. More recently, Tony Blair, who kept his Catholicism hidden the entire time he was Prime Minister in the UK. Because he didn't want the debate.
Look.
Because it would cause trouble.
Yeah.
Nicest way, personal feelings get in the way of politics.
I get that, and I get that, but the problem is the church has already been slapped down once in Mexico, literally a few years prior.
Don't slap them down! Bribe them!
I suppose I could bribe them to make the herds of people back me. That's the only thing.
Yes!
That's the only thing religion's good for. As a tool of control.
I think we should move on.
But
As much as an interesting
anyway,
question.
so once the country's
I
thoroughly
think we should
secured,
move on before, especially considering how close we are to Christmas. I think we should probably move on before Fleet gets
anyway, given
taken
the,
out by a.
Don't worry, I have
So
Foxo
once
on
the-
standby with her rifle.
so once the
To take Fleet out or to protect Fleet?
so
That
once
cannot be
the-
disclosed at this time.
so once the
Yeah.
so once the Mexican country is thoroughly pacified, we can get to work. So that's by 1932. Give me 2 years. So 1932, 14,000-ton dockyard space. I'm going to assume, ideally, given that I have 2 years to build them up, I'm going to have at least 3 dry docks and 3 slips of that size per coastline. Ideally, I have infinite money, not infinite space. I'm probably not going to want to build anything that big at first.
You have infinite money.
yes.
That's good. Have you bothered to check out the geography of the Mexican coast before you start doing this?
I know that. Look, I'm sure there's got to be space for 3 14,000-ton dry docks on each coastline.
Have a look at the Pacific coastline of Mexico.
I know it's a bit rocky, but I'm sure you can't sit there and tell me there's. Google.
Remember, you don't just need it to be flat, you need it to be the right sort of soil to support it. You need something which can take the weight and pressure you're going to put into the land of putting a significant dry dock like that there.
There are, the northern Mexican coast with the marshes is not perhaps ideal, and the breakwaters along that area. It's good for coastal traffic, but there'll be great anchorages, but there's no real space there. It's gonna have to be towards the south, probably around Puerto Vallarta, where you actually get
Really?
firmer space you can put a dry dock, and you have a sort of flat area you can do it.
Really?
That's the only place I can really think of. There are some other areas further down, but that's the place with probably the best bet for it. Well, there are some other places as well I can see. I could definitely see places for a few dry docks of about. I'm sure I can find at least 3 spots. You can't. I refuse to believe you can't fit 3 dry docks on that coastline of about 14,000 tons.
Oh, you can, but your timeline for completing them, you wanted to build them in how many years?
I mean, I was more.
And the thing is, it's not just manpower and money. Concrete actually takes time to dry.
Yeah.
And the more you have to apply, the longer it's going to take time to dry.
Yeah, that's a good point. So how long would? Well, let me ask. How long do you reckon? Oh, actually, I will. I was spitballing. I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of dry dock construction. So how long would you reckon for the West Coast and the East Coast to build 3 dry
Because
docks
you're
per
going to
side?
have to do... Because you have to do full geological surveys for the time period, you're talking about 1920s and 30s, then you have to design, profile them. You can do some of that work while you pacifying the country, but not much, because a nice way, those people are going to be your targets numero uno, and you're possibly going to have to bring some of them in from abroad. You might have some locals who can have the requisite skills, but you're not going to have many.
Yeah, I know.
So you're going to need to probably bring in some from abroad.
Yeah, probably from the UK.
You can probably build free, but you are probably going to be looking at, on each coast, you are probably going to be looking at the best part of 4 years before you get them online to the point at which you can start building stuff in them.
Oh no!
Just think about how long. Think about how long it took the Germans to build their dry docks up in the run up to World War II when they were trying to rebuild their infrastructure.
Yeah. What about slips?
And they are not starting from scratch.
What about the slips?
Slips are slightly easier, but not much easier. They still have to be, especially if you want to build a 14,000-ton ship on them.
Yeah.
That's not going to be.
And
That's not something you want to. That's not
Yeah.
going to be quick and easy.
And thing is, and while I have a limit of 14,000-ton dockyards I can build myself, if I'm trying to build a second-rate navy, then I'm gonna need at least 1 or 2 big dry docks of about 40,000 tons, because a second-rate navy is one that operates capital ships.
Yeah, and you're going to need probably at least one of those on each coast.
Yeah.
And they're
So-
going to be really big and
What
difficult
kind
to
of
put
capital
in.
ship would you be
8
making,
years.
though, is the problem?
We're gonna get to that. But let's 8 years for one 45,000-ton dry dock that can accommodate and I'm gonna be generous and future-proof. A ship of about Hood's length of about 40,000 tons, just to give myself wiggle room.
No, you can, in a nicest way, it doesn't matter the size of the dry dock. It matters the time it's going to take to lay it out and to pour the concrete.
Oh, no,
if
no,
you've
no,
got
no.
infinite money, so you can build that in the same time as you're building the others.
Oh,
But it's going to take
that's not gonna be an increased time. I thought you said it was gonna.
No,
Really? So that's gonna take 4 years as well, roughly.
because it's the layers of concrete you have to build up that
Right.
is going to take the drying. So let's say you pour out a huge amount of concrete. It's going to take a certain time to dry before you can lay. Go and have a look up. If you want a really good example, go and have a look at the Hoover Dam project and look at the efforts they went into making that concrete dry, and how long it took for the Hoover Dam to actually dry,
Yeah.
and how much work went into the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
So, I will
So
question
let
one
me.
thing.
Okay.
Why are we trying to build a 45,000-ton dockyard?
Because we're allowed. The question demanded a second-rank navy. A second-rank navy is a navy below the first-rank powers. The first-rank powers are the Washington Treaty powers. So that's everything from Italy up. A second-rank navy is something like Spain, Argentina, Chile. These are fairly powerful forces, and they operate as their centerpieces limited numbers of capital ships. Now, if I'm building the best second-rank navy in the world, I'm going to want capital ships.
Yeah, that bit I understand. I just don't
The other
understand
thing
why
you might want to,
45,000
the
tons.
other thing, if you've got infinite money, you also might want to look into the Solar Coast Santa Cruz Canal project,
Yeah.
which I think was considered at one point, because in nicest way, you ain't gonna have enough forces to be able to do the use the Panama Canal as your main route.
No, I think I need to build my own canal. That's not actually a bad idea.
Honestly, I actually potentially kind of agree with Southgen. Potentially look at other nations to buy ships off them as
Oh,
well.
oh,
if
no,
you really
oh
want
no,
to start going.
oh no, bear in mind, I only have the 14,000-ton slips. The dry docks are for maintaining the capital ships I buy from abroad.
Yeah.
I just think 45,000 tons is a bit big.
Well, no, it's future
If you're
proofing.
building them from scratch, you might as well go for it, because honestly, it's the big problem I have with a lot of the British infrastructure. In a nice way, we depended on quite a lot of the infrastructure we built up to and prior to World War One.
There's
That's
also-
how we coasted through World War Two and these
Yeah.
things. And also, if you were building infrastructure in that period, you would be building 50,000 tons.
Yeah, there's also the advantage that if I build these very large dry docks,
Although, and this
like
period,
if
he's not going to be able to order. He's not going to be able to order anything bigger than a treaty class ship. So, in nicest way, yeah, he's giving himself some space. Himself some space.
yeah, because I will know with hindsight that I am like 8 years away from the treaties collapsing. So,
Yeah.
but what I'll say is, I'm also, because I plan to buy probably from British or possibly French yards, depending on what I'm buying. Because I'm buying a relationship, probably British I buy from. There are some limited niche items I want to go to France for, but it's mostly going to be British.
Why are you not buying American?
Because I don't. Because to be blunt, while the Americans are, they say you always talk about buying a relationship.
Yes.
So I'm buying a defensive relationship with the British because, to be blunt, the Mexican.
What makes you think the British are going to pick you over the Americans?
Well, no, they don't have to pick me over the Americans. I can work with both. I'm probably going to buy a relationship with both, but I don't want to depend too closely on one partner, simply because Mexico.
Okay.
When Mexico is too dependent on one or the other, we see problems emerge.
You also have the British Petroleum doing stuff in Mexico at this point in time.
Yeah. But besides, I need to play them off against each other when I end up. when I end up negotiating for more Mexican control over the oil fields, shall we say. I'm not going to do the thing they did historically and nationalize them outright, but I am going to attempt to negotiate for more favorable terms.
I don't think that'll end well for you.
But very quickly, so what are we looking at here in terms of the Mexican fleet? So, we are looking at, ideally I want 4 capital ships. I want 4 prestige items, which means I can have 1 in active service in each ocean, 1 going through a refit/rebuild/repair cycle, and 1 in reserve, ready to be surged at a moment's notice should conflict break out.
I have a terrible idea in regards to this matter.
But we'll get to them later. The first thing we need is, while we're waiting for our dry docks to be built, we can already get started. So the first thing is we are going to want corvettes. We are going to want vessels for trawling up and down the Mexican coast, securing our sea lanes. Thinking about 20 such ships. Very simple things. Just basically a sort of a Mexican equivalent to small Coast Guard cutters. So start at the bottom and go up. So, pair of... Probably you want them to have big guns. Sort of just to try and... Because they're supposed to be commerce protection vessels, so you want them to... with some ability to shoot at annoying people on the shoreline. Which my navy needs to be able to do, because it's Mexico. People tend to get uppity occasionally. So, I'm thinking a pair of 6-inch guns. About 800 tons. Tooling along at around 12, 13 knots. I'm basically talking about a gunboat, in essence.
Yeah, I know you're talking about a gunboat. I'm also thinking about the treaty limits at the moment, which whilst they don't apply to you, you should be probably trying to follow at some point. And I would be saying it'd be far easier to build a sloop with some 4-inch guns and end up with about 4 4-inch guns on than a pair of 6-inch guns. Because you build a pair of 6-inch guns, you're suddenly an issue which would warrant a cruiser turning up, which is going to smash your day. Whereas you build a sloop, you might actually have parity, which turns up to cause you trouble.
So, by the sounds of it, Fleet, you're basically referring to the M29 class of Monitor here.
Kind of.
2 6-inch guns, 1 6-pounder, and 2 AA guns, all on about 600 tons.
Also, it's in a nice way for something which is going to be wandering up and down the Caribbean and the Pacific, especially with the idea of monsoon season and those things. I would not be going for less than 1,000 tons. I would be looking at something in the region of probably 1,500 tons.
Can I square the circle? Can I have a boat of about 1,200 tons with a pair of 5-inch guns, and then 2 3-inch dual-purpose guns for secondaries?
You can, but I would say that means you're going to have ammunition storage for both types of gun, and you're going to have training for both types of gun. And whilst you do have infinite money, you don't have infinite space on any hull.
No, that's true, but what I would say is that if I'm going to be building up the navy, having 2 different types of gun on my corvettes could be a good thing for cycling crews through them, training on what will be the secondary battery for our cruisers, and our basic type of heavy AA gun, the 3-inch. At first.
Okay, you can do that.
And it also gives the
ships... The fact you're not going for a dual-purpose secondary is just inefficiency to me, but we'll leave that to one side.
Well, no. The 3-inch is. It's a secondary. And the 5-inch gun, while it is a secondary, single-purpose gun on the sloops, the 5-inch guns on our capital ships will be mounted in dual-purpose mountings.
So why don't you have them dual-purpose mountings on your sloops at this point?
Cost. It's like with a lot of these ships.
You have infinite money, though.
Oh yeah, I do, don't I? I'm trying to be realistic. I'm trying to think about...
Yes, but you're being realistic in a way which is going to create false economy. You're not saving any money. If you go for a pair of double 5-inch dual-purpose mounts, that saves you the cost of 2 mounts. It means you have a double gun 4, a double gun half, so you have a broadside of 4 on each side. You know, and it's you only have 1 shell type to maintain. If you want to, you can put 40mm pom poms. in the middle. You can put as many of them on the hull as you want.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it does. I kind of agree with Mo. It does kind of sound like you just want basically a cut down Erie class that the US would like to build.
Yeah, that's probably
And
close to
you're
what
not-
I'd want. Yeah, it's probably close to what I'd want. In terms of
But you might say, what use is that for you?
yeah.
Because what use does if you've got 4 5-inch guns, that's going to do a lot of damage to shore positions. That's going to do damage to ships. Basically, anything up to a destroyer and below has to pay attention to you. And it's quite good for AA.
I think I've become a victim of bloat. Literally within the last 5 minutes. I literally started as a small vessel for doing work, and I got so tied on to my gun caliber that I forgot the role it's supposed to play. It's supposed to be 20 to 40 small ships just tooling up and down the coast saying, "Hi, we're here."
I don't even need that many.
I have unlimited money. I may as well enforce my maritime.
Yeah, but just because you
boundaries.
have unlimited money doesn't mean it's worth building
You
a massive
probably-
number of ships.
You probably need about 24. And let's be honest, let's start working this through. That gives you 12 per coast, which means you usually have 4 out patrolling, 4 probably in some form of maintenance, and 4 working up and all sorts of doing other things. But you also can have them doing visits, etc., as they're going around. So you want them moving around slowly. They're going to be covering the roles of fishery protection and maritime security, trade security and interdiction, all those things. So you're going to need a few of these assets. But again, 12 per coast probably does most of your job.
4 or
and
5
if you
inch
want to
guns
build up some more,
and dual or single purpose.
Also, I would like to add one thing.
I
It
would
has
go
been
for a
mentioned-
dual purpose, and if you're going for British, you go for 4-inch. If you're going for American, you go for 5-inch.
I think I'm
So
gonna.
Wellesley has also added on the stipulation that technically speaking, while you have infinite money to build, you do not have infinite money to maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So trying to get 40 of these ships.
Yeah, so 24 is probably what I need.
24 is fine.
Okay, so.
And if you want to add on the facility them to be also doing minesweeping role, you might well add on another 12, which you keep in reserve, so you can activate in the wartime. So you have 6 reserves on each coast as well.
I think I'll actually build a
And that
dedicated.
also-
I think I'll build a dedicated class of minesweepers that are very, very cheap and dedicated to that role.
That's what sloops were in this time period. They were also the minesweepers. They were the dedicated minesweepers. Look up the Halcyon class for the Royal Navy, etc.
Yeah.
Sloops covered all these jobs.
Yeah, so I suppose
So-
I'll add them as minesweepers as well.
Yeah, and so if you want to have the thing about reserves, especially if you want to be able to expand your navy in wartime rapidly, and you want to have a greater pool of people, and you also want to have things like honorary officers and reservist posts, which you can give to people who you'd prefer to be doing their civilian jobs, but you want to keep them connected with your armed forces. Reserve ships are quite a good thing to have because also that gives you 12 reserve captaincies you can give out, and some reserve commodores.
Yeah.
Because you could have it so that the squadron, they're each squadrons of 6 ships, and they each have a reserve. They have a rear admiral and a commodore, as well as the 6 captains, and for each of the squadrons to train up your staff officers in running them and supporting them.
Yeah. So let me think. I'm gonna training cruisers. Do I need a single or a pair?
Depends. What are you using them for? Just your officers or everyone?
Everyone.
Well, considering you want a second-rate navy, you're probably going to want a couple of them.
Yeah. Honestly,
Also, potentially,
honestly, I don't
even though
think
they're training cruisers, they could be potentially used as actual cruisers if a situation comes up.
I'm leaning
potentially.
towards. I'm leaning towards a large.
Argentina.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was going towards. Something
I was
like,
actually going to suggest something a little bit small because that's a much later design, relatively speaking.
She's a later design, but we can get something similar by basically going
Well,
to
keep in mind the Leander's not actually developed yet.
You
should
can
predate- Yeah, you could definitely
you
get
can
an 8-gun
get-
cruiser, but
You
Okay,
can
I'm
get
just
something
gonna check.
similar.
I'm just checking something real quick. Oh no. She is actually authorized. So she's actually laid down in January 36. So no, we can actually just go to Vickers and say, yeah, that thing.
Would like two of those?
Yeah. Those ships.
that is admittedly 6 years into your
yes,
control
but,
here.
Yes, but bear in mind.
Yes, but he's been stabilizing. He's been stabilizing
Let's go for 2
the
years.
country. He's been building infrastructure as well up, and he's building the corvettes.
Yeah.
And frankly, for a while, you need the sloops are going to be your training cruisers because most people are going to you buy the training cruisers once your sloops are working, and you are now looking for a larger something bigger to jump up something bigger. And basically, you order the cruisers at the same time. You order some flotillas of destroyers for each coast, which is 9 vessels for each coast, and you order some submarines, which is also probably 9 vessels for each coast. So you end up with, those and if you really want to be at this point is also when you order another 12 more sloops.
Yeah, honestly, Dr. Clark, in terms of boats, I'm going to order 10 of the US's latest fleet boats for the Pacific Squad, for the Pacific Flotilla, and I'm going to order 10... Is it the U's or the V's that the Royal Navy's building at this point? In the mid-30s. They're small boats for the Mediterranean.
The U's are the closest you're going to get to in this period,
Yeah,
but basically, I would say you actually would want to be ordering what's sitting in Tallinn, which is a U class, which is modified to also be a mine layer.
Yeah, because I don't want the big fleet boats like the Gatos or the Balaus for the Caribbean. I do want them for the Pacific, but I don't want things like the modified U's for the Pacific, but I want them in the Caribbean.
Why do you want the big boats for the Pacific?
Because they are ideally suited for work. They give me options, basically. They give me the options to put those boats anywhere in the South and North American coast I like. I can sorted them from their base in the west coast of Mexico and have them up in California or down on the coast of Chile with endurance spare for patrols. It gives me options to operate in that entire area, basically. And it gives me comfortable boats for the crews to work in. But they're just too big for the Caribbean.
Okay.
Whereas
if you want these big boats, then you might honestly want to look at the T class.
No, the T's aren't... Yes, the T's are big boats, but they don't have the same mix of endurance and... Like, the T's are excellent ambush predators. They are very good boats for locking down areas and dealing with enemy surface combatants and just enemy naval assets generally. But when it comes to general patrol work, when we see the T's forced into that role in the Med, and in some cases in the Atlantic and the Pacific, they don't do as well. They're not bad boats.
Why are you looking at the Med theater for what you're... Honestly, what happens in the Med shouldn't even be in what you're thinking about, really, because the Med is a very different environment.
No, but the Caribbean...
The Atlantic and Pacific, maybe, but even the Caribbean's not got the same type of situation that the Med had. Med was rather unique for submarines.
It was.
I also comment, the U.S. fleet boats don't really come online until the 40s. You don't have a...
Well, I'm assuming he's going off the salmon. I'm assuming he's going off the salmon class, maybe.
That is.
That's 36.
Late. That's still pretty late into the 30s.
Yeah, like this is what I mean. Like so far, most of your naval development up until 6 years into your potential reign, get some gunboats.
Well, yeah, it has to be by necessity. The Mexican.
I'm not sure how long you actually have is the only problem.
The Mexican fleet, as it stands prior to my arrival, is an old Brazilian coast defense battleship, and a bunch of frigates and old destroyers. In order to build a second-class navy, I have to move in steps. Dr. Clark, are you all right? Oh, you are moving. I thought your camera had frozen then.
Yeah, no. He's thinking.
I'm thinking
when...
why you are. I'm trying to work through what is the logical reason behind having two different styles of submarines, which have very different design methodologies behind their controls and their structure and their controls, and whether it's a sensible option or whether you're just trying to get your crews killed. I'm not sure if you're treating Mexico like the Elbonian Navy or if you're treating it like you something actually want to do.
Oh no, I'm trying.
Okay, so you have. You have until 39.
Really? Well, the problem is I can't create a second-class navy in that period. I can build the ships.
You can.
I can build the ships for a second-class navy, but I cannot create a second-class navy. I cannot instill the culture. I cannot create the officer corps. I cannot create the body of enlisted men.
I'd say
required.
your biggest problem is in nice way buying any battleships in this period, because in nice way all the major powers are building their own battleships, and there's no way you can build the facilities to build them.
There's one situation that you wouldn't have the facilities to hold them temporarily, but if you can afford to deal with them temporarily, before 32, you could look at the British. That's a nice class of 4 battleships you have there that are going to be scrapped soon.
No. Specifically, you're not allowed to sell them on.
Nope. Yep.
But if this is before the actual negotiations start, though...
Nope, that's under Washington.
Say you do this...
Nope, it's under Washington.
It's part of Washington.
It already exists. You can't do it. It's the reason why
It was
deliberately
basically
not done
it was put in by the Americans as a way to stop the British giving them to the Dominions.
I get that. I thought it was giving it to me.
Could you try and buy the South American dreadnoughts then?
No, the South Americans won't.
You're
sell.
allowed to build ships for them, but you're not allowed to decommission ships and sell them off to them.
The South Americans won't sell.
I don't know. Brazil's economy is
Brazil
dead.
probably would
I
be willing
don't
to look
want
at
the
it.
Minas Gerais class at that point.
But also,
Battleship is battleship fleet.
No.
Also, yeah, we are a second-class
Minas-
navy. Really, the question is, what is our role? Do you even need battleships, realistically? Potentially, yes, you might want them to deal with the South Americans. But how much do you actually need for that, potentially? What is your role in the
things
future
that
you're looking
separates
to
a
here?
third-class navy from a second-class navy in the Washington Treaty period is whether or not it operates capital ships. So the Spanish, the Argentinians, the Brazilians, and the Chileans are all second-class navies by virtue of the fact, and also the Russians as well, are all second-class navies by the virtue of the fact they all operate battleships.
Then you don't actually need a battle. Then you don't technically need a battleship, because you said if they operate a capital ship, they are classed as a second-class power.
There is actually someone who you could buy a battleship off, and could have it built, and we just haven't thought about them.
I was thinking they're not
There are.
Scandinavians. So go on.
No, they don't have. They would have to build the infrastructure to build it first. The Russians.
You can't be serious.
It's not as nuts as it's not as nuts as you might think.
They have the infrastructure. They're working on the Ganguts with various situations. If you go to Stalin and go, I would like one of the Project 21s, you could get them built, and Stalin would love you for doing it. And that gives you another person who's in your favour.
Also,
supporting
keep in
you.
mind, you've got infinite money here, right?
to
You
be
could genuinely go to Stalin. Here's a blank check. Give me these ships.
To
And he'll go,
Yeah,
okay.
it's like you're offering me hard currency. I could just buy the Ganguts wholesale as a class.
Hey.
Yeah, but why? At that point, buy Minas Gerais.
No, the Ganguts
yeah,
are
that-
actually decently maintained and are better ships than the Minas Gerais.
Yes, but you could literally get these battleships built to order.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're building the Russians, you could do the Russians a great favour. You could go, well, I'd like to have British, and maybe I want to have American engines and British-built guns and these things in them.
It's one of the things, but yeah. The problem is my plan for building such a fleet would have to be long-term, just by necessity. Trying to rush it.
Well, the thing is,
runs into all
you
these
could actually,
difficulties.
in the nicest way, you could, the time it's going to take the Russians to build those ships, you could order them in 1930.
And then they'll probably be ready? 38 maybe?
Yeah.
Potentially. But say you order 3 of them.
36. You could order 4. So you can have a pair for each coast.
Honestly, if I'm doing this, if I am ordering from the Russians, as you all seem to want me to,
Project 21.
No, not at
You
all.
are aware?
No, not at all.
You
Too
are
much
aware
shit.
what Project 21 is? Like, what is Project 21 fleet? They do. This is something that is a bit important here. Do you actually understand what 21 is?
That's not Savetsky Soyuz.
I am
No,
aware
it's
it's
not.
not
That's
Savetsky
23.
Soyuz, but even then, it's still too much ship.
It's a 35,000-ton battleship.
I know, but I still think
It's Nelrodsky!
Yes, I know
It's Nelrodsky!
I know it's Nelrodsky!
It's Nelrodsky!
I know it's Nelrodsky!
It's the best battleship design they have at the time. It's the one
know.
that Stalin actually considers ordering. The reason he does it is because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the money yet to support the infrastructure to build it. Whereas you could build it, and that would actually give you a very decent battleship. Let's be honest, Nelronsky is a good ship for you.
Honestly,
Even the Americans might go, "Oh, held up! What do you got there, Mexico?"
I mean, to be fair, okay, I would accept a Project 21 if the Russians downscaled the guns to 14 inches, and the reason why I
Why?
want to, the reason why, is to ease the construction process, because I know the Russians are more likely going to be able to build up a good 14-inch gun based on the weapons they were building
Well,
in
the
the
thing
Ismail class
No,
than they are to
Fleet,
warm
you
up
don't
a new-
understand. Fleet, you're missing the point here. If you're building this in their yards, you can go, well, I'd like to order American guns and American boilers or this. If you're building in the yard, you can order a battlefield hot rod. And the Russians will love you for doing it because it gives them access to those technologies,
Yeah,
but you'll be paying the bills.
Yeah, but the British and Americans are going to look at me, laugh hysterically, and say, "We're not giving stuff to the Russians."
You met Vickers salesman. They'll sell you a 14-inch if you were stark raving mad and just walking around in a toga made of your national flag. As long as you have the money, they'll sell you a 14-inch gun. This is Vickers.
It's not so much Vickers; it's the governments behind them, holding
Yeah,
their
but Britain
leash.
but Britain doesn't really tend to
What the-
stop Vickers.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, but-
and America doesn't stop Bethlehem Steel. Remember, they were happy to ship them battleship-grade guns to Germany for the Greeks prior to World War One.
Yes, but that's not the Soviet Union. It's a different kettle of fish entirely.
Yeah, you're talking about the Soviet. You're in Cold War mentality,
No, I'm not.
post-McCarthy era. You are not in this period. In this period, honestly, they don't view the Soviet Union as that much of a threat.
There was
Yeah,
a wave
at this
of
point,
red
please remember,
squares.
this is the 30s,
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah, there was a
The
wave.
Americans are helping to industrialize the Soviets. They're
Yes,
shipping mass loads of tractors, agricultural equipment.
And if you have this money,
Armament,
you can very easily
ship,
bribe
machinery.
people.
basically, at this moment, the Americans are bankrolling the Soviet Union.
Okay, all right, fine, all right. The panel
right,
wins.
we're not-
The panel wins. We're building Project 21s with British 16-inch guns.
Can I just jump up here a second?
Yeah.
British
Uh,
16-inch
so-
guns?
Yeah, you want the American ones instead. Anyway,
Yeah.
I would also like to point out that the first tractors that started arriving to the Soviet Union from America were actually under the Lend-Lease programs when America and the Soviet Union were in the war on the same side. Funny enough, some of the first big tractors that were sent to the Soviet Union by the Americans actually went to some of the Siberian gulags to help fill mass graves of random prisoners.
Okay.
Funnily enough, the guy who spearheaded Lend-Lease to the Russians, I can't remember his name, but he was one of the big secretaries of state of the time, actually visited one of the gulags, and many of the quote-unquote workers were actually children and members of the NKVD that had been dressed up in rags to make them look more healthy, mostly to sell the idea that, no, this is actually going to a good cause. We're not just using them to fill body pits and then do more mine clearance with human slaves. But anyway.
Hey, these things are fun. These things are fun, but in this way, you have to remember, we are dealing with an era which was far more realpolitik than the ideological stuff we have going on today, or had forming the Cold War.
All right. So, and I suppose the only thing left is destroyers and light cruisers, because I'm not building heavy cruisers. No, it's the 30s.
I'm going to stay here for now.
I'm basically going to sit there, and I'm going to go, alrighty then.
Which nation are we building this for, by the way?
Mexico.
So you know that Argentina design I bought from you, Vickers? Yeah, I want you to rip out the teaching area, stretch it a bit, give me another triple turret for 4 of them, and then once you've done all that, give me the revised weight calculations and get me 6 of them, please, thanks. And then for the destroyers, and I'll go to the Americans and buy.
Why?
I actually would consider buying French destroyers.
At that point in time, you
No,
actually have to
look at
stuff
what
like
the Polish started. The Poles have the French. The French are not very good.
Oh, no,
suppliers.
you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah, no.
The French destroyers only really work for the French.
Yes.
At that point,
The Swedes
yes,
do
it's a
quite
worse
well with the
crown class.
Italian destroyers.
I was actually going to say Italian destroyers might also be a good idea.
Yeah.
Because remember, it's
But the trouble is,
it's not paying to build.
Fleet is designing a logistical nightmare and training nightmare because he's going to have different power plants, different engine systems from everywhere. Basically, I hope he's built a massive naval academy at this point because he's going to need separate sections for every single engine and boiler room he designed and theme he has bought.
Oh, actually,
He is going to literally, his engineers are going to be the most sought after ship's engineers in the world because they're going to be the only people who can use American, French, British, Italian, Swedish, and Russian systems.
Success!
Well, clearly you just get your ship.
All on one ship.
Actually, yeah, because also,
They're,
make sure to get Swedish
they're all
Bofors.
going to be Chief O'Briens.
Also, you can all blame Wesley for this one.
As much of a war? Are they going to be as much of a war criminal as O'Brien was?
Yeah, you can blame Wesley for this one, folks. He's the guy who took us down this particular rabbit
Hey,
hole.
it's an interesting question.
It is an interesting.
I think we've got very different perspectives
I have
of how to do things.
I have actually missed these questions. I'm not gonna lie.
I personally don't think the idea of extending La Argentina into making it a discount town class is a good idea because this is more discount than the Crown Colony.
I just leave it as a 9-gun ship. Leave it as a 9-gun ship and just be happy with it. In a nice way, you can churn out an extra instead of getting 3, get 4 of them for each coast.
Yeah, get 8. Yeah, it's a good shout. And then
you need hull numbers more than you need hull numbers more than you need an individual ship which has a lot of guns.
Yeah, and then at that point you've got 10 similar ships, including the 2 training cruisers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense. For destroyers, honestly, just we've bought British for most of everything. You may as well finish it off with. Then again.
All right, hear me out. Hear me out. How funny would it be to have a bunch of Mexican tribals?
You know, I was just thinking this. Tribal class 1936.
Problem is,
bearing in mind that
look, the tribals
also, like,
are good
no,
destroyers.
hold on, Fleet, hold on. Who exactly is Mexico really going to be fighting with these ships? Realistically speaking,
I don't know, but I was asked to build a second-class navy.
Narotskis are going to be fighting alongside the U.S. Navy in the Pacific War, and they are going to be wonderful because they're going to be able to keep up with the carriers. It basically is going to be
having a set
the US
of
Navy has outsourced their capital ship escort of their carrier forces to the Mexicans.
Having a set of mostly gun destroyers in the tribals, but Mexican, that can be very quickly either retooled and retrained to act as anti-aircraft destroyers, and thereby act as carrier escorts or fast combatant escorts. Really useful.
Well, the more interesting thing I'm sort of currently thinking of is the amount of people who in the Discord and the YouTube chat have decided the fleet is a Vickers 14-inch salesman.
Hold on. I'm gonna make a vanity roll for the server, and it's just gonna be that.
Out of curiosity, how plausible would it be to put the 5-inch 38 twin on a tribal?
Sorry, a what on a tribal?
The 5-inch 38 twin.
You could
if you want to try and standardize
it's
also
doable.
with weaponry with the US, that is a potential look.
It's not going to cause too much trouble. You could do it.
But either way, just getting tribals to
it's getting less in your anti-service capabilities.
I think the bigger issue with that is mostly going to be the logistics train, and that's not much of an issue. I guess maybe the fire control system might not be super geared towards it, but again, you could just replace the FCS with the one for the 5-inch 38.
Oh, you really don't. You really don't want to. Not the 5-inch. Not
the original, obviously, but like a later.
No. The 1944 one, very good. The 1936 one, avoid like the plague.
Yeah.
Because personally, Mexican tribals definitely sounds like the best way to go if we want a decent destroyer force. Because also, if you send them to the Pacific, the Japanese are now having multiple nightmares of Australian tribals. And now, wait a moment, what do you mean the Mexicans are coming with 10 tribals? What do you mean there's more of them?
Imagine the Guadalcanal campaign.
Well, especially if the Mexicans have been taught by the Royal Navy how to do night fighting tactics. Tribals closing, so we see the so white of your eyes. Then we launch our torpedoes.
One thing Glad Fleet hasn't brought up yet is the idea of getting a carrier for Mexico, because I just do not.
There we go in theatre at sea text chat.
I think it's mostly because Fleet don't think the carrier's needed for a second-rate navy.
Mexico has no real need for a carrier.
I think it's
To be
more that
fair-
Fleet hasn't really thought through the logistics of this a lot.
No.
I would say, but he could order carriers, and that would be an interesting thing to do in 1936. It'd be a case of when the treaties break down, to basically go to America and go, "Can I order some Essex class along with you?" Or can I join the Essex swarm? The other interesting thing is if he's been building Narodsky. The other
Hold on
interesting
now.
thing
Can we?
if Fleet's built Narodsky,
Doctor,
have the Russians built any Narodsky as well?
of course they have.
Can we?
Because
Can we appreciate the quick comment of Mexico will buy 1942 light fleet carrier post World War II like everyone else?
It's
That would be very funny.
No.
And I kind of want to see
Well,
it,
funny
but
thing
at the
is-
same
well,
time,
funny thing
no
is,
real reason to.
No. Yes, but no. Because I just had a thought. Dr. Clark.
Have you
when
just
does the-
run
He's
back
also got a
over
threat.
there?
Well, yes,
He's
I
ran to
have
the
run
archives
back.
and back in this time.
Because remember again, the original idea of HMS Unicorn is in the 30s, right?
Kind
Yeah.
of.
And the light fleets are based off her, right?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So, therefore, why not, instead of waiting for the light fleets, why not become the light fleets?
Admittedly, the idea of having a Mexican HMS Unicorn that supports the US carrier fleet?
Yeah. Why
Doesn't sound
not?
that
Why
bad to
not
me.
instead of them being known as the light fleets, instead have them be known as the Mexican offshoot carriers? Because we got there first.
They'll probably still be known as the
So-
light fleet.
Well, so there are some key differences between Unicorn and the 42 light fleets.
No, I'm aware. But
Really
I'm
aren't as many as you're about to list, because most of the lists that I've found are actually wrong because they misunderstand what Unicorn's design was like.
Yes, they do.
Speaking as the guy who wrote his PhD thesis on it before you go in there.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm just going to let you. I'm just going to let Dr. Clark cook then, because he knows
like-
more than I.
Because I'm not talking about buying. I'm not talking about buying.
Well, I mean, I say cook. He's cooked. He's now going to
Yeah.
serve.
Yeah, I'm not talking about buying
basically-
Unicorn. I'm
yeah,
talking about.
The Royal Navy has an ongoing study process, which is of the lighter carrier variety, and basically Unicorn comes out of that and is okay. This is what our light fleet carrier looks like if we have all these extra engineering spaces included in, and then the light fleet carrier is. Well, if we take the 1940 design is we take that out and we take out the engineering spaces and we add in a few tweaks to because of our understanding experience in the war, that's then the design. And it's once you take off the fact that the people used to point out the changes, go, these are the changes in the design, and you go, well, honestly, they're the tweaks due to war experience. You can actually find the notes of them. It's not a new design. They've tweaked the existing design, and there's an honest, good reason why the DNC is doing that. Because if you look at, like, example things like the Hunt class escort destroyers, when they take a design and they try and existing design and they try and do too many changes and they try and tweak it too much, they end up with problems. And if they try and develop a whole new design, that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of resources. So what they want to use is use the existing design studies as much as possible throughout the war, which is why the Royal Navy really doesn't develop new ship designs in World War II. They're all based off Henderson's designs, the designs done in his period, because those are the design studies which had already been done, already been worked through. The light fleet program, a light fleet carrier, is a Unicorn design modified after it's already had the engineering bits removed.
How long would it take for us to actually get one of those laid down, Dr. Clark, if we went to the British and say, we've seen this thing you're building, we want...
You go, in a nicer way, the time period you're talking about, you go for the light Ark Royal version.
Yeah, but could we get something equivalent to the size of a light fleet based on Ark Royal?
There is a 15,000 standard displacement ton version of the Ark Royal design in the Ark Royal design papers.
1, 2, or 3 carriers.
Okay.
Dr. Clark's got the eyes on.
Well, the thing is, it depends. Have you completed your canal or not yet?
Let me think. If I'm ordering, so let me see. When is Ark Royal laid down? Because I probably wait a year or two after she's laid down. Let me just have a look. So when is she laid down? 35. So if we're ordering ours in after she's launched, so if we're ordering ours in 37, and I start the canal construction and throw all the money at it in 1930, the canal will probably be done by 1938. So a year before.
In which
our
case,
light
you
carriers.
probably need free, because you don't need, you can have a third one for going in refit and also things, and you can just move it across the canal. Whether if you need one to carry out each coast, you don't need to have a spare for each coast.
Yeah, so 3. At that point, we have 4 fast battleships, 3 small fleet carriers, 10 light cruisers, 18 destroyers, 24 gunboats, plus another 6 for minesweeping in wartime.
12.
Sorry, 12 for minesweeping in wartime.
I still think it's a mistake you don't have heavy cruisers.
I'd say you have a limited capacity, and if you've got the capital ships and the carriers, what are the heavy cruisers going to offer a second-class navy that the others do not fill in? Whereas, if you think about it, if you've got limited resources, do you want to start up another line of support, another line of logistics, another line of training, another line of maintenance, rather than expanding on existing vessels? So, if you have the spare money for heavy cruisers, why not build an extra pair of battleships, an extra pair of carriers, an extra 4 light cruisers? Those sort of things. That's far more sensible to spend the money on than. And honestly, you probably need about 2 flotillas of destroyers per coast, because you're going to need some to escort the carriers and the carrier and the battleships, as well as doing your other duty with destroyers.
Yeah, this is why I went for
so you
18 destroyers, which gives you 9.
How many battleships do you have?
Let me see, 4 battleships and 3 carriers, so that's.
You have 7 capital ships, which would each require at least a pair minimum of destroyers as escorts.
Hang on 1 second.
Which would make it at least. That's 14 of your 18 destroyers already used.
Yeah, and
there is a reason I suggested you might want 18 for each coast, because also, how safe is it to escort a carrier with only 2 destroyers, or a battleship with only 2 destroyers?
I'm gonna have more destroyers than I have sloops.
You often do end up with more destroyers than you have sloops.
Yeah,
but actually, you're going to end up with, if you've got 24 sloops in service and 12 in reserve, and you end up with 36 destroyers, you're going to have 36 sloops and 36 destroyers.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Clark, 36 destroyers. I have to. So they're saying I don't have unlimited money for maintenance. So to be blunt, in your opinion, out of the Americans and the British, bearing in mind what is the bare minimum destroyer out of
which
the offerings?
Is the navy which actually designed the space into its destroyers to allow for ease of maintenance?
The RN.
Because remember the quote from Henderson to the First Sea Lord, when the Chatfield was complaining the destroyers were too big, he pointed out by having the bigger destroyers, they actually made it easier to maintain them, so you could actually have a smaller crew.
Yeah. Out of the, because I know destroyers are important, and I get that. But I also need a lot of them, and by this point we're starting to reach the limits of what the budget can afford to keep going. So I need to accept 36 reasonable but not overly pricey destroyers. So that rules out things
cut down
like
tribal.
No, that's still far too much destroyer.
No, it's not. 6 potentially dual purpose guns, 1 or 2 torpedo launchers, potentially more than one. Basically J/K style.
Oh god, no! Again, that's still too much destroyer. I'm thinking something more like the war emergency builds.
No, because those are.
Then you're gonna go for that. Go for a weapon class.
Look at what the Royal Navy ordered. What the Turks ordered from the British. The I class. 4 quick-firing guns, 10 torpedo tubes, depth charges, and my ability to carry mines as well, act as mine layers.
Yeah, that's
Fantastic.
I personally would still
crew of 137 in peacetime, 145 in wartime.
Yep.
Only 1,400 tons in standard.
Yeah, that's about what I need. Because it gives
again,
me the mass, and they're good enough.
Why would you keep if they're 4 singles at this point?
Yeah, considering Fleet also is going off the idea he has hindsight. Fleet's going off the idea he has hindsight. You might want to try and push for the 3 twins potentially instead.
We have to maintain.
The Ice could take the 3 twins. They could take 3 twin 4-inch, or 3 twin 5-inch probably.
Which is why I was more thinking something along the lines of
they traditionally have. Yeah, you don't. That's a post-tribal class sort of build, and it's going to be too late for you to get the ships in service in time, because even destroyers take roughly Well, the I class are laid down in 36. They're not in service till 1937. So they take
That's why I was
over a year
suggesting
to
cut
build.
down tribal. You basically
Yeah.
go off the ideas of a tribal and cut
It's
it down
too
a bit
much
more.
destroyer, Dragon.
No.
It's too much destroyer for Mexico. We don't
Go-
need...
The I class will do fine. The I class, a modified I class with 3 twin mounts would do fine.
Honestly, I'm happy to just go Italian and keep costs down even more just for... and go for 2 twin 4-inch.
No, because the Italians are designed, the Italian vessels are designed for the Mediterranean.
No,
That's what I've been suggesting,
No,
Leslie, and apparently
no,
that's too
no.
big.
I don't mean in terms of style of ship. I mean just 2 twin 4-inch mounts to save weight for other things.
But only 4 guns is pretty
You don't need
anemic.
to. With the I class, you have to remember they've got 4 4.7-inch guns. So if you drop down to, let's say, 3 twin 4-inch, they accommodate that.
Hmm.
And instead of carrying 60 mines, you accept 40.
Yeah, I suppose.
You're fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's all right.
Personally, it almost feels like too little destroyer capability, but
Remember, you're not talking about individual vessels, though. You have to remember it's in aggregate.
Yeah,
And the thing is, the I class are good general purpose. It's not about the individual destroyer on destroyer fight. It's how many are you bringing to the fight along with your battleship and your cruisers and your
agree. I love the I
aircraft.
class.
And the fact is, the I class do have 10 are able to launch a salvo of 10 torpedoes.
And we have and we have 36 of them, and they can do everything we want them to do. They can be destroyers, they can be
Yeah,
escorts, they
but-
can lay
but they-
mines, they can hunt submarines.
Yeah.
They can do everything we want them to do. And at that
So,
point,
along with your sloops, you've now got 72 vessels which are ASW warfare capable.
Yep.
72 vessels which are capable of doing mine laying.
Oh.
72 vessels which are capable of doing, the things you needed them to do.
yeah, and since I am running Mexico as benevolent dictator, I'm obviously going to.
And
I'm basically.
you've
going to-
invested money. You're also, by the way, with the canal, you've also sorted out some of the costs of your maintenance budget because you have just created a great revenue stream for Mexico.
Yep, which I will obviously siphon some
'Cause you
off to maintain the navy.
Because you've probably made the canal wider than the Panama one.
Which is going to make the US, which is going to give the US a choice. Either they stick with Panamax for their ships, or they go, we can design them wider, but we have to pay the Mexicans to go through their canal.
Yeah.
Which is going to make them
It might mean it might mean you need to fortify some parts of Mexico's land.
yeah. Although alternatively, I could say to them, I have an unlimited budget. I can pay for the same upgrades for the Panama Canal if you'd like. If it gets you,
Why would you want to?
because it gets them off. Because it removes some of the threat calculus from the minds of US politicians.
It does, but also undermines your economic reasonings.
Yeah, and it's also a case of
Far easier to use your unlimited economic power to buy those politicians, or rather, maybe primary them.
Yeah, probably. But I do want to talk about some funny moments from a hypothetical world that this would come in very quickly. Bismarck tries to do a funny. Also, Bismarck runs into 2 Nell Rodskis coming back.
Well, this implies Mexico's getting it. This implies that Mexico actually declares war on
Yes,
Germany. to
yes,
be fair.
because I'm running Mexico, and I am going to fight the Nazis, because fuck the Nazis.
Your own nation might have some disagreements about that.
I'll
all those
just
fires
stage an incident.
fires you've been putting down.
I'll just stage an incident where where Mexican flagged merchant ships are running to the UK, and then they will obviously get sunk by the Germans. And literally the first one they say, I'm going to say, you can't do that. It's a civilized world. Revenge. And we'll obviously...
I more than see what could happen if anyone learns that you did this.
No. I'm not sinking the ship. I'm sending them to Britain to aid a nation under siege. The Germans will inevitably fuck up because...
Yeah, but isn't
That's
that a
relying on
case
luck
of
then.
that's not against the Articles of War, is it? If you're actively helping a besieged party.
No,
Yeah,
no,
breaking a
no,
blockade.
but if I'm shipping food in, that's just...
Yeah, that's still breaking. It's
What's
still
covered
breaking.
under
That's
a
still
siege,
breaking
breaking
the
a siege.
blockade.
Yes, but they're doing it unrestricted submarine warfare, which makes it illegal.
It wouldn't be illegal in this case because you're a valid target.
No, you are not allowed to sink a submarine. You are not allowed to sink a surface ship via surprise torpedo attack. That's against the rules of a blockade. You have to stop, search, and then sink if carrying contraband.
Also, you could sign lots of long-term contracts with the British in 1939 about the supply of food, and that would give you pretext for continuing delivering the supply of the food. Especially if the papers didn't have a break clause in them for war.
Yeah, well, no, it's not against the Articles of War, but it is no, you've touched my stuff, I want to fight you. But again, you've still got other issues of trying to be at war with Germany could have other issues.
I mean,
it's not that simple just going to war with people.
I mean, yes, it is, and no, it isn't, because we've bought an agreement. We've bought like a relationship with the British. We are also very keen to have our own merchantmen. We can also phrase it as our merchantmen being protected, while they're doing vital trade to Britain. We can also highlight the relations that will have no doubt been built up between Britain and Mexico through the construction of the new canal, which will have been built with British help, and our new industries for naval and other things, which will probably have resulted in a lot of people having relations with people in Britain. The relationship between the two countries will be a lot closer than it was historically. There will be a lot more common ground, and there'll be a lot of personal relationships with people in Mexico will have with people in the UK.
Will they?
Given the amount of investment we're talking about in Mexico, and the amount.
But that's not how. But that's not just because you're investing does not mean you get personal relations to this level. You're talking about the idea basically to almost neighbor countries having good relations for.
No, I'm not
potentially
talking about.
decades.
I'm not talking about that level. What I'm talking about is you've got at the upper levels of government and some of the more well-to-do members of the nation, and even then, even some of the lower echelons. When you're talking about a project as big as building a transoceanic canal, you're going to have personal relationships and back-channel contacts between the two countries built up to a degree beyond which was currently standing. There will be enough of a connection between Mexico and the UK to make the cause for war and sympathy for the UK enough that we can actually justify going to war, especially if we commit to naval operations only and not committing Mexican ground troops beyond a purely volunteer-only officers and men force provided to British command. And that's a pure volunteer force, just volunteer officers and volunteer men to go and fight.
But this is also how you get your ships actively targeted, though, later, so...
Well, yes, but that's...
like I said, your nation might not necessarily like the idea of going to war at this point. No matter how much of your infrastructure is done, the actual people might not approve of all this.
Well, thing is, the people aren't going to notice any real change. You limit... This is why volunteer ground troops... Volunteer ground troops...
The trouble is, the volunteers that are going to volunteer are probably going to be your most loyal troops, so you don't necessarily want them all to be going off volunteering for war and going away from Mexico. I would say that if 1930, as well as starting the across Mexico Canal, if you started off a program of we need to train engineers, etc., and things, so we can do this entirely ourselves in the future. So I'm going to sponsor people to go to university in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And study there.
Yeah.
Things like medicine, engineering, all those things.
Yeah.
Then you can build up that relationship.
Yeah. But I mean, the real funny thing, of course, is Mexican battleships fighting Bismarck. Although the funniest thing to me isn't Bismarck, it's during Operation Berlin. You know when Rodney comes charging over the horizon at Scharnhorst when she stopped? It's not Rodney. It's a 30-knot Nelson ski. And suddenly Scharnhorst can't run away because that's what Project 21 was supposed to be able to do. Even if we can only do half
21, 25 knots.
Not from what I saw. I thought it was supposed to be 30.
Lead is right, but I would suggest it's only going to achieve that if you've got American engines put in it.
Which I thought we were going to. it's still very, very, very funny. Because, well,
Mhm.
and then of course you've got the even funnier scene of, oh, we need carriers for Midway. Hey, Mexico, yeah. You know how you fight the, yeah. Do you want it? Yeah. Well, we'll
If
send.
anything,
we'll
to
send.
be
We'll
fair,
send
your
two of
carriers
our-
more seem to be support stuff, not.
Well, no. For Midway, if Nimitz has the option to bulk up his force with 2 extra carriers, he's not going to say no.
He might, depending on how well coordinated your stuff is and inter-fleet coordination.
And what
You don't want-
aircraft are you bringing?
Yeah,
If
you
you
do
bring
not
in
want the
Gloucester
Mexicans-
Gladiators,
You do not want the Mexicans accidentally going, oh, that's the target there, and blowing up a US carrier.
I mean, come on, that's a little bit of a slap.
You're going to say that this doesn't happen, but it has
No.
almost actively happened
No.
multiple times.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's a little bit of a slap in the face to assume that Mexicans wouldn't be able to tell ships from each other.
Fleet,
It's just they're
the Royal Navy almost torpedoed its own ships multiple times.
Yes.
if the Luftwaffe bombed its own ships,
Yes, I'm aware of that, but the assumption was there.
No, it's the fact that these things happen in war. It's not an assumption of any negligence or anything. It's just potentially these can happen.
Well,
Potentially,
It is.
It more seems the Mexican carriers might be used in escort/support duties than full-blown major battles.
well, not at first.
You're effectively a large escort carrier / repair carrier.
No, that's not right.
No.
If you're
Because
doing
what
about
you've
the
done is you've
15,000 ton design,
You've done the 15,000 ton version of the Ark Royals, which has an air group of about 40 aircraft. So, as the British were planning on running it, so it's not bad.
what aircraft though? Is the
I'd say-
question.
We'd probably
Yeah,
we'd be
good.
buying American. We'd be buying American.
why?
So would you be able to
Because they're
fit
nearer.
40 American aircraft in them?
Yeah, there's no reason why not.
Also, are they necessarily
Especially
newer fleet?
Ark Royal style carriers, and that's the way they'd have the full size Ark Royal hangar.
Here's the
So,
thing.
the whole hide
yeah,
hangar.
Well, yeah, because the US would actually be happy to have people buying carrier aircraft to help bulk out the numbers of purchased aircraft to bring overall costs per unit down. So they wouldn't
He'd
mind.
probably be buying Wildcats alongside the French.
Yeah. And SBDs.
Nope, you're not buying SBDs
Why am I not buying SBDs?
because they are outside the time period where you're allowed to buy things.
Why?
Because you're explicitly told you're only allowed to buy stuff up to 1939.
We're talking about we've gone beyond the scope of the question. We're talking about
Yes, but the question did explicitly right. Like, if you mean just ships, then the entire thing can potentially break down because you can do some really weird stuff there. But
but if we're talking price
Very
about-
abacorsal. It's very abacorsal swordfish are really what you want to buy in this period.
yeah. And for fighter
Mixing it as your strike aircraft,
and for fighter
and for
aircraft-
fighters you want to go American.
Yeah. Honestly, for the period we're talking about, let me just do a quick check. Let me just check something real quick.
What are those masked Mexican wrestlers called?
Luchadors.
I just imagine like the Mexican version of the Gladiator, just the luchador.
Oh no, we'd be buying Buffalo.
wait.
We'd be buying Buffalo because for the period we're
There
talking
is the
about.
other option though. Fleet, there is the other option.
Oh yeah.
You could have a talk in this period with Admiral Henderson about what little aircraft he's got Supermarine working on, the Gullwing Spitfire or Gullwing Seafire. And you could order that because that's being worked on in this period.
Oh,
you've got
would be-
unlimited
and you could
money.
get them. You could get them built.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be really funny. Oh, anyway,
which might
so,
also allow him to go to the Royal Navy. Hey, I've got these.
Yes.
That actually we've cycled up production for them.
yeah, do you want them? You want
Ready
them?
to go.
It's yours. It's literally that Zeldin meme. Fighters, torpedo bombers, battleships, you want it? It's yours, my friend, as long as you let me renegotiate the BP oil contracts. Right, so,
British Petroleum.
yeah,
The
so,
final boss of any country that has oil.
yes. So, very quickly, last question is a YouTube question because I've actually gone 50 minutes over, but I do want to have one last question that isn't that one we're just done about to finish.
Which is why my sausages were getting cold, so I went and grabbed them.
Good. Okay, so, Knight6831 has the last question on YouTube. Does the World of Warships Commonwealth cruiser Cerberus sound like a reasonable idea of what a county class replacement might look like? Let me have a look at what the Cerberus looks like, shall we?
They're effectively enlarged. They're effectively enlarged counties, but it's not the enlarged county, which is the Surrey type. It's what do we give them basically? 888" instead.
I think it's one where you can take it. It's one of the ways you can take a successor to the counties. But I think, given when the Royal Navy is looking to build new 8-inch cruisers, you're looking at... Well, Dr. Clark can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm actually going to ask him to just fact-check me if I am wrong here. But I believe the RN looks at the possibility of building new 8-inch cruisers in the mid to late 30s and just decide to double down on the towns instead.
Pretty much, yep.
And if you're looking at a successor to the counties, it's going to have to be something that's radically different. So it's not going to look like an enlarged county like a Cerberus. It's going to look like a town, but with twin or triple 8-inch guns.
Yeah, that's more what stuff like Auckland or Albemarle are.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, Cerberus is also meant to be a 20s design, though, so this is not looking to... This is much earlier in the design studies. It's meant to be what Cerberus is.
For a direct successor...
If I remember correctly, it's made on the improved county designs, which we looked at some points.
Yeah, so in that case, then yeah, it's a possible future that was not pursued, shall we say? That's probably a very good way of capping it off. And with that, what has been a very...
It's my question.
Also, since I've bloody got it up,
yeah,
I'll
we did.
use it.
We did your question
ni
first.
Is literally ni and me, 2 and 3 in Japanese. Hence why Z23 is called Nimi.
Yeah, Foxo, we did your question. You know, the one about...
No, you didn't.
Unless there's a different one.
You most certainly didn't do a questions this time. But...
Which one did I miss? Because we did the one about the...
But no, they haven't actually come up yet, but...
Fleet, have you been being nasty to our Foxo?
I would never dare.
He's ending ramblings this early.
It always runs for 3 hours nowadays.
Foxo, has Fleet been bullying you?
Not as much as Dragon, but yes.
I'm not even gonna... I'm not touching that
No,
one poll.
It's because I've basically been telling her that she needs to get a reasonable amount of sleep and she needs to eat at a semi-reasonable rate. Apparently this is being mean.
You've been making me eat vegetables.
No, I haven't. I've never told you what to eat.
You've been making me eat vegetables, Fox. Is that kind
That's your choice. That's your choice, not mine.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Dr. Clark, for being here. As always, resident expert on ramblings. Ooh, the resident ramblings expert. I like that. That's double alliteration. That's pretty good. Thank you, Dragon. Thank you, Foxo, for being the regular co-host panel. Thank you, Guy, for being the Dutchman. Thank you, Moe, for being Moe, as always. And of course, I will see you all tomorrow for the start of a new Rule the Waves campaign, which will be the Ottoman Empire, a historical start in 1900.
Couldn't you play a decent game where the ships don't look like so terrible in their graphics?
Well, where it's not a spreadsheet.
People like the Rule the Waves streams.
Really? Really?
It's still
Good
spreadsheet.
Yes.
I'm not going to comment on other people's tastes, but yeah.
Yeah. Is it do they like it, or do they just wish to support you, Fleet, because they know you like it and they're kind? You know, people like Knight are just fonts of kindness.
You know, it's like Fleet when I'm watching spreadsheets for our D&D campaigns, and ignore the actual gameplay. Just I'm purely watching the D&D spreadsheets slightly change.
Look, I am.
Do whatever you seriously do what you wish, but
Yes, Lee. If you don't rule the wave so much, you would be a brilliant warehouse dock manager.
Don't remind me of warehouses.
Do you do rule the waves so much because you find the UAD ship designer confusing?
No, not at all.
Because you can't produce the Hosh.
No, not at all.
I thought you could produce something pretty
Be
similar
honest.
to Hosh on the 1890 start.
Not really.
To
I
an
know
extent,
I know France
the
can
fact
do
that he
a-
knows it's not really like it.
France
There
can
is
do
a there is a
hybrid sail steamship for France. That is actually one of their early hulls.
Right. Can we? Right. Ending it. Thank you everybody for coming. Take care. I'll catch you all next
Clearly,
time.
need to make him keep going further.
If anyone needs me, I'll be in event room 1.